I'd like to call the City Council meeting of August the 5th, 2014 to order. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Ray.
Here.
Marsh.
Here.
Kenyon.
Here.
Petty.
Here.
Tennant.
Here.
Shopmire.
Here.
Adams. Long.
Here.
Mayor Jordan.
Here. Would you join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first order of business we have tonight is the bi-monthly report on public transit in Fayetteville. Joel, I believe you have this for us.
Yes, sir. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, my name is Joel Gardner. I'm the Executive Director of Ozark Regional Transit, and what I would like to do, first of all, is quickly pass out a quick spreadsheet. Ladies and gentlemen, my report this month is to just show a quick indication of where we were this period from January to July of last year to this period of January to July of this year. On this spreadsheet for the city of Fayetteville specifically, our fixed route ridership has increased 5%. Our paratransit ridership has increased 31% for an overall ridership increase of 7%. These things can be attributed to, first and foremost, the use of the paratransit software that we have had for a number of years, and I've directed the staff to go ahead and learn actually how to use it, how to go ahead and manage our assets to the point to where we are getting the biggest bang for our buck on the paratransit ridership, and also, of course, with the new routes that we've instilled in the city of Fayetteville. One of the things that I do want to add on this is that we, with the help of Washington County, went ahead and added a new route called the 620, which goes from West Fork all the way out to Farmington and back, and that is actually also bringing riders into the Fayetteville area. Out of the 335, I believe, riders that we've had on that route just this month, 166 of them got off at Lot 56 and 156 boarded at Lot 56. So it is a service that is being used that is bringing people into Fayetteville. When we poll the riders on that particular route, the biggest indication is that they're using it to access college services. But as far as the routes themselves are going very, very well, and I do appreciate your support throughout the year. Are there any questions?
Do we have any questions for Joel on this? Everybody good? All right.
Sir, thank you very much. You folks have a wonderful evening.
You too. Okay, next order of business we have tonight is the consent agenda. Number one, the approval of the July 15, 2014 City Council meeting minutes. Number two, Duval Aviation Incorporated, resolution to approve a 5-year lease for the airport hangar at 4158 South School Avenue to Duval Aviation Incorporated for a rent of $1,700 per month with biennial rent adjustments to begin retroactively on July the 1st, 2014. Number three, General Improvement Fund grant, a resolution to authorize acceptance of a General Improvement Fund grant in the amount of $34,500 for snow equipment parts and snow plow replacement, and to approve a budget adjustment. Number four, bid number 14-41, Central Salt Company, a resolution to award bid number 14-41 and to authorize the purchase of crushed rock salt from Central Salt Company in the amount of $106.16 per ton as needed through July 31st, 2015. Number five, bid number 14-42, Vance Brothers Incorporated, a resolution to award bid number 14-42 and to authorize a contract with Vance Brothers Incorporated in the amount of $256,480 plus a contingency of $25,648 asphalt microsurfacing of city streets. Number six, Darrell Froud lease agreement, a resolution to approve a lease agreement with Darrell Froud for about 54.5 acres of city park land for the sole purpose of cutting hay for the amount of $100 per year. Number 7, 2015 Arkansas Outdoor Recreation Grant. A resolution to authorize an application for a 50-50 matching grant to the Arkansas Department of Parks and Tourism's Outdoor Recreation Grant Program in the amount of $250,000 for improvements at the Fayetteville Regional Park. Number 8, Garver, LLC. A resolution to approve a professional engineering services agreement with Garver, LLC in an amount not to exceed $328,200 for engineering design related to the Cato Springs Trail. Number 9, Community Development Block Grant. A resolution to approve a budget adjustment in the total amount of $23,484, recognizing a 2014 Community Development Block Grant revenue increase. Number 10, Arkansas State Highway and Transportation Department Change Order Number 14. A resolution to approve a payment of $104,142.96. The Arkansas State Highway and Transportation Department, representing the city's portion of construction costs related to Change Order Number 14 for improvements to State Highway 16 and to approve a budget adjustment. Number 11, AEP SWEBCO Agreement. A resolution to grant Mayor Jordan the authority to negotiate and to approve a utility work agreement with AEP SWEBCO in the amount not to exceed $86,330.41 for utility relocation and underground installation necessary for public safety and aesthetics related to the Spring Street parking deck project. Number 12, SWEBCO utility easements. A resolution to authorize the transfer of utility easements to SWEBCO for the relocation of power lines on city-owned property near the corner of West Watson Street and Campbell Avenue. And number 13, 2015 employee benefits. A resolution to approve the 2015 employee benefits package. I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as read.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda as read. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray,
Yes.
Marsh,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Shopmire,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Okay. Under unfinished business, number 1, RZN 14-4729, Cato Springs Road, Chambers Bank. An ordinance rezoning that property describing rezoning petition RZN 14-4729 for approximately 253.23 acres located along Cato Springs Road adjacent to the city's regional park property from R, PZD Residential Plan Zoning District, South Pass 08-2898 to UT Urban Thoroughfare, CS Community Services, and NC Neighborhood Conservation. I will entertain a motion to go to the second reading.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to go to the second reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray,
Yes.
Marsh,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Shopmire,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Long.
Yes.
An
Yep.
ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 14-4729 for approximately 253.23 acres located along Cato Springs Road, adjacent to the city's regional park property from RPZD Residential Plan Zoning District South Pass 08-2898 to Urban Thoroughfare, Community Services, and Neighborhood Conservation.
Anything new from staff on this?
We presented this item at the ward meeting at the Senior Center, Activity Center, and answered questions there. And then it was also presented at the Environmental Action Committee, and Ms. Marsh might be able to give an update on that as well.
Okay.
The Environmental Action Committee voted unanimously to recommend approval of the rezoning.
Okay. Any questions from the council? Okay, we will take some public comment on this. And before you come to the microphone, everybody give their name and address. Everybody gets one turn at the microphone unless city council member brings you back up for questions. Always keep your comments to the chair, which would be me. And please don't engage city council member or another member of the public. So who would like to be first to address us on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council.
Move we suspend the rules and go to the third and final reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go to the third and final reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray.
Yes.
Marsh.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Shopmire.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Long.
Yes.
An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 14-4729 for approximately 253.23 acres located along Cato Springs Road adjacent to the city's regional park property from RPCD Residential Plan Zoning District South Pass 08-2898 to urban thoroughfare, community services, and neighborhood conservation.
Any final comments from the council on this? Okay. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray.
Yes.
Marsh.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Shopmire.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Long.
Yes.
Okay, number 2, enact Chapter 119, Civil Rights Administration. An ordinance to amend the federal code by enacting Chapter 119, Civil Rights Administration, to protect the civil rights of federal citizens and visitors, and to create a position of Civil Rights Administrator for the city of Fayetteville. I will entertain a motion to go to the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to go to the second reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray.
Yes.
Marsh.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Shopmire.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Long.
Yes.
An ordinance to amend the Fayetteville Code by enacting Chapter 119, Civil Rights Administration, to protect the civil rights of Fayetteville citizens and visitors, and to create the position of Civil Rights Administrator for the city of Fayetteville.
Okay. That's anything you want to start off with?
I'd just like to, again, thank the council for considering this and the work of our city attorney's office in helping draft it and some of these housekeeping amendments that are before us today, which you all have a copy of. I want to reiterate that I'd ask that we leave this on the second reading tonight and follow our standard rules of order and vote on this at our next meeting on August 19th. And who knows, maybe there will be another housekeeping amendment or two to present at the next agenda session. I want to state again, just for the record, that I brought this forward because I'm against discrimination. And I think Fayetteville has a history of doing the right thing, and there's an opportunity to get what is, in my opinion, a good law passed. I know we have a lot of people here that would like to talk about this tonight. I'd ask that maybe before we enter into substantive discussion on these amendments that are brought forward, that we not really take these up until after public comment. I'd like to make a motion to make these amendments after the comment period.
Okay.
Second.
Well, that wasn't a motion.
How about you say you like to make a motion? Okay.
I'm eager to.
Any other council members want to comment before we take public comment? Okay, we're going to take public comment. Now, when you come to the microphone, name and address, please. And everybody gets one turn at the microphone unless council member brings you up and wants to ask questions. Keep comments directed to me, and please do not engage a council member or another member of the public, okay? Everybody good with that? All right, who will be first?
Mayor Jordan, my name is Jeremy Flanagan, pastor Pathway Baptist Church. I live at 1736 North Cannondale Drive in Fayetteville. I have a lot of concerns about this, was actually out of town and came back in this afternoon just to have the opportunity to just express some of my concerns. One of the things when I just take a look at this is the language in defining who a business enterprise is and who a place of public accommodation is. I think actually both sections would include a church, which is obviously important to me. When you look in chapter 119.2, paren A, when you see that it talks about a business establishment, if its membership requirements consist only of requirements under which a substantial portion of the residents of the city could qualify, I would think a substantial portion of any city could qualify to be members of most any religious institution. And so I think by that definition, a church could be argued to be a business establishment. I also think when you go to chapter 119.5, paren A, paren 2, when you look at, or actually 119.2, paren L, when it talks about a place of public accommodation, it says that it lists many different things. And then it says that all other establishments within the city which offer goods, services, accommodations, and entertainment to the public. A place of public accommodation does not include any institution, club, or other place of accommodation which by its nature is distinctly private. When I look at that, I could see someone saying that, well, a church is private. However, I see Fayetteville Country Club as private. I'm not a member there, and unless a member brings me as their guest, I cannot attend. However, our services in most every church that I know of and religious institution is open for anyone to come participate in worship. And so I don't see how a church would be called distinctly private, and so it would be a place of public accommodation by that. Then you take it further, a church like ours that has a commercial entity that leases part of their space. We have a daycare that leases part of our space. Many churches operate daycares, which provide services to the public. Would that not also make them a place of public accommodation? If a church allows a Rotary Club, a Al-Anon meeting, other things that they try and do as a service to the community to use their facilities, if they do have a policy where a person can rent their facilities for a wedding or other things, at that point I think that would also make it a place of public accommodation. So as a pastor, I see that this, number one, it doesn't have it in that section L to where it names religious institutions, but it also never excludes them. And to me, the vagueness almost seems that it is there to allow for churches to be included, and I think the language definitely includes churches as both business establishments by definition and places of public accommodation by multiple definitions. And so when I see that, it concerns me because then once you become either one of those, our First Amendment rights, I think, would be challenged. At times when you go to chapter, I believe it is chapter, 119.5, paren A, paren 2, and it says to print, publish, circulate, post, or mail directly or indirectly a statement which indicates that an individual's, and I skipped this part there in the middle, skip down to indicates that an individual's patronage of or presence at the business establishment or place of public accommodation is objectionable, unwelcome, unacceptable, or undesirable, unless the denial of goods and services is required by state or federal law. And so as a church, many religious institutions have differing views, especially on many of the things that are here that aren't necessarily in other federal statutes concerning protected classes. Different views. Typically in religion, you would say views on homosexuality or things like that. If you want to make it a lot more broad, in the Bible it says drunkenness is a sin. So, I mean, at that point, if I say that, and I put that in a printed material and we're a business establishment or a place of public accommodation, I think that covers a lot of people, including probably most people who sit in my chairs every so often on a Sunday, and so that have been at that place once or twice. It just opens the door to where now we have to be careful about what we say because now we can be criminally liable. This doesn't have any recourse. It shows me no appeal. It shows me no recourse other than an unspecified authority of a civil rights administrator would decide whether or not we are to be criminally prosecuted for this. And I believe that goes against our First Amendment rights to be able to say our statements of belief and statements of faith, no matter if you're whatever religious background you are. And so that's a concern of mine. Also, when it comes to the hiring of staff, when I think religious institutions now are qualified in those two categories, and it says that the only time, see, it doesn't mention us as being exempt. It doesn't mention us as being included. However, I think it includes us. But it does mention that we are thought of, because the only times we are exempt is when we're hiring non-secular staff. So I would take that to mean maybe clergy, pastor, somebody who is deemed to have a religious role within that religious organization. But I can tell you, it doesn't matter if it's church, office staff, if it's, maintenance workers, if it's other people. One of the people who meant a lot to me at one point in time was the man who kept grounds, having religious conversations with him. For a religious institution to be required to lay down their beliefs when it comes to hiring whatever a person deems as non-secular staff, that becomes problematic. I honestly don't see that happening very well. It would also, we don't have a school, but others who have private schools, multiple churches here, whether it's St. Joseph's, whether it's Fayetteville Christian, in the hiring of teachers or administrators, I think it be argued that under this, that they could be required to hire people that do not share the same basic beliefs that their church does. And so that concerns me quite a bit. When I look at all of those things, and I look at the things as a pastor that concern me, I look at the cost, which I don't know if anyone has shared what a potential budget for this could be. what authority this civil rights administrator could be. All I know is that they have, in my view, carte blanche to do what they need to until they hand you over for criminal prosecution. And we don't know of an appeal process, we don't know of a defense process, a mechanism in place until you have been cited for criminal prosecution. And at that point, you can begin, officially to know what your steps are. I mean, all the way through it says to act in good faith, but who determines what good faith is? The civil rights administrator. I don't know what their definition will be. I don't know who that will be, and I don't know what guidelines will be set for that. It concerns me. However, the largest concerns I have for all are not as a pastor and not of somebody of faith, but honestly as just a citizen. When I look at some of the definitions when it comes to specifically about gender identity, I've had friends, coworkers, bosses. It does not bother me. What a person chooses, I obviously have my own faith and my own beliefs. But when you talk about gender identity, as it's described here and is defined elsewhere, gender identity is a person choosing how to identify themselves. And so when I see that, by definition, a person is able to declare whether they're seen biologically as a man. They can declare that they, however, identify themselves as the gender of a woman. And the same thing, if you're biologically a woman, that you can identify yourself as the gender of a man. And there is no burden of proof. There is no anything other than the fact that everything in this ordinance seems to put the burden of proof on what it calls the party, which is always the business establishment or the place of public accommodation. And so when I see this, and I'm not just dreaming things, because other states are going through this, who have enacted similar ordinances by cities or states, and multiple have gone to state Supreme Courts. Many of them are still in litigation. And the discussion is, okay, if a man, for example, claims that his gender identity is that of a woman, then he can use a women's public restroom. Okay? If he is to be afforded all of the rights and the protected class of gender identity, then once he declares what he is, we have to accept that. If we don't accept that, the burden of proof is on us. And that burden of proof only comes after the Civil Rights Administrator starts talking to us about a complaint filed against us, which we have no idea what that process will be. And so when a person claims that, comes into a religious establishment, a restaurant, anywhere else, that this person, a man, would be using a women's restroom. They also would be using, when they go to a store to try on clothes, you're taking your daughter, your granddaughter to go back to school shopping, and they're going to be in changing rooms in stalls right next to you and changing there. Now, when you take a look at that and you see that, and then my questions on how it works with women as well, when a woman claims her gender identity to be a man, then at that point, a man at a public swimming pool, if they go to Wilson Park, doesn't have to wear a top. What would a woman who is in a protected class by her gender identity, which she is the only one who can declare what that is, how can then we say that she cannot bathe topless? How can we say that she cannot walk her dog down the public sidewalks topless? If she is to be a protected class by gender identity, which she alone decides, she has that right. And if we're to say otherwise, then honestly, there's no point in moving forward with this anyway. And so when you say that and you say, well, that would never happen, well, it depends where you're at. If you're in Minnesota, if you're in Utah, if you're in New York State for a non-workplace issue where this has happened, they decided that no, people with gender identity who claim something other than what they biologically were born, that person cannot use public restrooms, changing rooms, other places. However, if you're in Colorado, if you're in Iowa, if you're in San Francisco, New York City, or Washington, D.C., they have all said that, yes, if we pass an ordinance such as this for non-discrimination and we include gender identity, then that person has the right to use the restroom of the gender which they identify themselves. Now, when you look in the individuals that I know who have had gender identity decisions of their own to make and other sexual orientation decisions of their own to make, when you see them make their decisions, that's one thing. However, have any of you looked at this and thought about that all it takes is for a person to declare it? There is no burden of proof. And so I don't deal typically in the realm of when people are doing what they feel is right in their heart. I a lot of times have to deal in the realm of people who make decisions that are bad decisions or decisions to hurt other people. And so when you see an individual where a pedophile could come up and use this ordinance as it's written and say, I classify myself as a woman, I identify in my gender as a woman, then that pedophile could be changing clothes next to your granddaughter in a department store. He could be sitting in the bathroom next to a woman just simply because he wants to get close to her. And he alone has the ability to identify what his gender is. No one else can say anything about it. And we have no way, and when it comes to gender identity, I mean, there is no way to say, no, you can't identify as that. And so if you pass an ordinance such as this that has gender identity in it, you're opening a door for a pedophile to get in there and to place themselves in a situation to, if nothing more, put themselves where they're trying to abuse people. You can have someone who's a sexual predator who goes to seek out women in public places and uses this as protection, and we will have given them protected class to do so, and to go into public restrooms and to go into locker rooms. Now, the one interesting thing when I saw this was that the only exceptions for this ordinance are state, federal, county. A lot of that makes sense because this overreaches much further than federal law. It overreaches much further than state law. And so that makes sense, but it also lists public schools. And if there is a reason that Fayetteville Public Schools should not allow a gender identity to take place, don't those kids also go to restaurants, and don't they also shop at stores in Fayetteville, and don't they also go to other public pools and other places? The Wilson Pool last week. And so that concerns me with the thought of a woman who identifies as a man coming in there and changing in front of my son. I don't want to explain that to my 9-year-old. And so, however, I could not stop that. She would be a protected class if she said, whether she actually believed it or whether it was a sexual predator. Men and women both are, and so we would have no rights to stop that. It's a very, very concerning thing to me that we're opening a door in order to try and protect people from discrimination. We're opening a wide door for abuse to women, to children particularly. It bothers me, it concerns me. And so those are a lot of the reasons. I obviously have some as a pastor when it comes to First Amendment rights, when it comes to our protected freedoms, but it's really as a father. It's as a father and a citizen that concerns me about this. And so I wanted to put those things forward just to bring it to your attention. I don't know if you've thought about those. I don't know if you've thought about the fact that religious institutions, by this, I don't see how they would not classify in one of those two categories and therefore be subject to all of it. I don't see how, and you did specify non-secular employment, but if you make a religious institution hire people for roles within their staff and administration that don't believe the same as that religious institution, I see that as, to some extent, choosing who you're going to discriminate against. And there's, in there as well, the only time you can discriminate is if you're already using affirmative action practices instead, and so those supersede. I don't like the idea that any time a church or a religious organization or a person that just has a conviction about an issue says, I don't agree with that, then they have to say, I'm going to discriminate against them, and now it's my burden to prove you why it's okay for me to discriminate against them. Right from the start, we're putting people who disagree with this ordinance as the enemy, as the defendant, as the people who have somehow a dark heart, that don't care for people, that don't want people to have freedom. But we have to have lines somewhere. This ordinance, when you look at things specifically, how Chapter 119.02, paren F, it redefines the number of employees to create what a business is. That seems to almost like it wants to supersede Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. And so Title VII of the Civil Rights Act already says what that is. It's 15 or greater. And so why, as a city ordinance, are we trying to change the definition of that when we know that if it went to court and someone sued, federal will win? I can't imagine that it wouldn't. When it comes to somebody being offended at a church, and if you have a civil rights administration that takes a religious organization forward criminally because of things they have posted that make someone feel unwanted, unwelcome, then I believe in the end that the city would be liable for First Amendment violations. We don't know how much the budget's going to be. We don't know any of this. I just have a lot of concerns as a citizen. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Pastor. Who would like to address us next? Please, come up.
Hello, my name is Duncan Campbell, and I've been a resident in Fayetteville for quite a few years. And I really appreciate the city of Fayetteville. I appreciate the people here in this room and everybody I've met. It's one of the best communities I've ever been in my life.
Mr. Campbell, could we get your address, please? Your name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2804 Rutledge.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And I have always been treated fairly in this city, courteously, respectfully, and everybody I know has been the same way. I mean, I don't think there's a big problem in the city of Fayetteville as far as people discriminating against others. It's kind of like much ado about nothing. I would love to know where the real and widespread problem is in this city, and even in Northwest Arkansas, about serious discrimination, especially in these areas here we're talking about. I don't know of any. I'd love to find out where it is, real or widespread. And a question I'd like to know, Mayor Jordan, is why did this come about and who brought it forth? Where did it come from? Because again, I don't think there's a big problem in the city. And I do think that enacting an ordinance like this will cause a big problem. It will cause lots of problems, and we just heard some of them. And I agree, I can't imagine, just as an example, for any woman to be in a bathroom and all of a sudden a guy walks in and he says, "Don't worry, I'm really a woman." It's not going to work. And there's so many aspects of this. A Christian musician who loves to play at weddings and happens to get paid is asked to do a wedding of another religion or something else that they don't appreciate. Even myself, I've asked different pastors and friends of mine in the city, could I use your building for a certain purpose? They've turned me down before. This would make them have to rent or lend me their building. And frankly, if I have to get a building that way to conduct a meeting, I don't want one. I want them to have the freedom. I want all of us to have the freedom. The freedom of the many should never be sacrificed for the perceptions of discrimination of a few. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Yes, who would like to be next?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. My name is Andy Wilson. I'm executive pastor at Cross Church. Address is 3484 West Weddington Drive in Fayetteville. Mayor, first of all, I agree with my colleague who was here earlier from Pathway Church. Many of the things that he pointed out, I won't go back through all of those because I think he did an excellent job stating what I would like to state and what I believe. But first of all, overall, let me just say this, Mr. Mayor. I think this ordinance is extremely dangerous to our First Amendment freedoms. I believe it's discriminatory against people of faith. It also poses as a threat to public safety and to our private rights. I would like to discuss a few of the sections and tell you some of our concerns at Cross Church. In Section 119.02, I believe that such a restriction that the ordinance is proposing would infringe upon the ability of churches and other organizations to provide outreach and critical services to our great community, which I believe is a critical part of the mission of many, many private institutions and churches. The other ordinance I would like to address is Section 119.05, and it's already been addressed twice tonight. I would just like to go on record against that this poses as a particular threat for the public safety of women and children. It has no exemption for bathrooms, changing areas, other private areas for public accommodations. This is very alarming to us, and again, I stand totally against that. Also, in Section 11907, I believe this ordinance contains hardly any protection for religious institutions with regard to filling employment positions. Again, this is already being addressed tonight. They are only protected in regard to filling the non-secular positions, which may be interpreted and limited to clergy. Also, Mayor, I believe this bill contains absolutely no protection for all the people of faith in their individual business transactions. Again, I say the city should not be able to compel people of faith in any areas that would violate their religious beliefs or their rights. I do agree, too, what was said earlier, that this ordinance stands to prove financially costly to our great city, to the citizens of Fayetteville. It would be most likely require additional personnel, additional legal costs to administrate due to the appointment of a new civil rights administrator. In closing, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say that these provisions clearly have no place in a free city. A free city like Fayetteville that provides itself with diversity of opinion and tolerance. Freedom of expression, freedom of rights belong to all, including those with sincerely held religious beliefs. I encourage, Mayor, we vote no on these proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to be next?
My name is Gladys Tiffany. I'm the director of Omni Center for Peace, Justice, and Ecology. And I'd like to speak for the amendment and thank the City Council for agreeing to consider this. Our reading of the amendment of the ordinance at this point really does not indicate that there's any necessity to consider First Amendment or other constitutional issues that have anything to do with this amendment. This is clearly an amendment that's intended to address some general issues that allow Fayetteville to take the high road in a lot of different cases. I think that the bringing up issues that have to do with faith don't really cause this ordinance to be called into question in any way, that there are a lot of issues that have to be addressed among us that do not lend themselves easily to deciding who's fair, who's right, and whose justice is in a certain case. I think that over the last 5 or more years, Omni Center and Omni Center members have made concerted effort to work across lines of race and color and class and a number of other ways that we have tried very hard to breach these walls that separate us anyway. And what we are finding is that these areas of discrimination are very real, very valid, and they operate on every level of our society. And I believe that Omni Center and many of our members would agree with the City Council that there are excellent reasons to have in place good, solid, anti-discrimination elements in our ordinance system so that we can address these issues when they're needed. And I would ask you to please support this when you come to vote.
I have a question.
Yes, Gladys, there's a question.
Ma'am, can I ask a quick question? And at Omni Center, I don't know the background of it, but my question is, do you work with people that bring discrimination to you? Is that what you do? Do you
No,
help?
we do group organizing, so we do a lot of different projects and activities that, because we're trying to reach across race, class, gender lines, we have opportunity to work with these people, and they tell us where they are suffering these discrimination issues.
If you hear of a discrimination issue, do you then, is there some matter of recourse that you help them with, or is it just between the two of you?
No one's ever asked me to help them do that, but there have been many times that I could give them ideas about where they could take that issue. So yeah, we we give some kind of support, but we don't actually deal with those ourselves.
But in your mind, are you saying that if this were to pass, that would be a recourse that then you could use for those people or help those people somehow? Would this
I'm
be
not
helpful?
entirely sure that it would. I think that what I see this ordinance helping with is that people can clearly see that their issues are something that their city is interested in addressing, and they can see that, yes, we have a place in our city because it really is, because there it is. It's right there in the ordinance, and we know what we can count on from the city.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, who would like to address us next? Yes, Charlie, please come up.
Good evening, Mayor. My name is Charlie Collins. I live at 3225 Piper Glen here in Fayetteville. And the first thing I'd just like to share is I think our city does an absolutely wonderful job of balancing different points of view in different areas. For example, we balance economic growth and job creation with taking care of the quality of life for people with our trail system and other things. And I think we've got an opportunity to continue on that proper path of growth. I'm also a state representative on the east side of Fayetteville, so I get a lot of calls from our citizens to help them with various problems. People will call me, for example, if the highway department does something on their property, or if they're having trouble financially paying their rent and they're looking for a solution, or they're trying to get state services or other services and they're running into problems for one reason or another. Obviously, a big change like the health care law is the kind of thing that people call me about with their problems. So I think I have a little bit of a sense, at least in the east part of the city, with the kind of problems people are encountering. And this isn't an arena where I'm not hearing from people that are calling me saying there's an issue with it. Now, that doesn't mean there's not an issue. And any one of you with your constituents may have somebody or 3 or 4 people that have called you with a discrimination issue, and they've been unable to get it resolved. And if there's something like that going on, we absolutely need to flush that out. We need to look at it, and where we need to see where the existing laws and the existing processes that we have in place are falling short, if that's the case, and then look to evolve or solve or narrowly target a problem if we've got a problem in this arena. Here's one of my biggest fears. If we take a far-reaching statement that is based on things like individual perceptions, which could be widely different and wildly different from person to person, and make legal situations out of perceptual differences across a wide range of potential violations, we could have a chilling effect on the employment situation in our city as new businesses and existing businesses evaluate the huge risk that could represent to them. People that have absolutely no intention of making any harmful decisions in any way to another person being at risk of somebody's perception being different than an individual's perception. So I just would ask the honorable members of the City Council to think very hard about this and see if there's a way where we can accomplish the objective of reinforcing our commitment to non-discrimination and reinforcing our commitment to diversity without putting our city in a position where businesses and people that hire people start rethinking and double thinking and deciding, let's not do that in Fayetteville, let's go grow jobs somewhere else. Thank you very much.
Charlie.
Sir, first of all, you represent my side of town, so thank you for your service. And
thank you.
I appreciate you. And thank you for coming, because my question would be, at the state level, are you satisfied with the current way that citizens in Arkansas have, if they feel discriminated against, the ways they can come forward, to whether it's Little Rock or wherever that may be? Are you satisfied with that at this point?
Yes, I am. The reason I say that is because when people come to me with an issue or a problem, invariably there's some uniqueness to it. In other words, somebody has a concern about the rate at which their home was appraised. and they're not happy because they feel like they're paying too much in taxes, and perhaps they don't know about the proper appeal process for that particular activity. And so, just helping them discover what is the process to appeal something like an assessment on your home that's higher than you think it ought to be is enough oftentimes to help people go through the process to solve their problem. Obviously, I do not know each and every appeal process for the wide range of things that people can have issues with, but what I do know virtually every single time is somebody that knows the answer. And, if I were to send, Mr. Marr a note, if I'm sending somebody that's at the DHS in Little Rock or somewhere else saying, here's an issue we have, what is the next step to resolve it? And I've been very pleasantly surprised with the problems that are brought to me. Once we get the right person, whether it's state government or city government or county government, involved in helping to resolve the issues inevitably get resolved to not everyone perfectly happy all the time, but to the satisfaction where they feel like they've been dealt with fairly.
And those resolutions come from agencies that are already paid by the taxpayers, already been created, already exist?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So if there was something that was falling through the cracks, that I was seeing, I certainly would be, ringing the bell on that. But personally, I just haven't seen that in my little corner of the world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Who would like to address us next?
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor. You doing okay?
I'm fine. How are you?
Great. Thank you. Oh, I'm doing good.
Name and address.
I'm sorry, Valerie.
I'm Valerie Biendara, Fieldstone. I live here in Fayetteville. I was actually pretty shocked when I heard that this ordinance was going through, because when I heard the background that why this ordinance, the councilman who brought this ordinance forward had said the reason why he brought this ordinance forward was because he had heard about Christians who had, because of their beliefs, had followed the dictates of their beliefs in saying that homosexuality is a sin and that they didn't believe in gay rights. And as such, they were being sued, and these are going to the courts. The councilman had made it quite clear that he didn't want Christians here in Fayetteville to do the same thing. And what's just concerning to me is to realizing in reading through this how much this impinges on the Christian's faith. I appreciate the pastors of Pathway and Cross Church. I've been praying all week how to address all the concerns that they brought up, and they spoke a lot more eloquent than I could. But as a Christian who has firm beliefs in the commandments of God, I see here that you are going to have an unelected administrator possibly fine me, put me in jail, prosecute me because I am a Bible-believing Christian. And it's fearful that you live in a city which makes it quite clear that the councilman who brought this forward specifically is targeting Christians. And he actually said, because of the actions of other Christians across that were bringing suit. I am pretty sure that you guys have received multiple letters of a lawyer that had gone through the ordinance. And time after time, as I go through there, I realize time after time, each section, it's anti-Christian, anti-Christian. It's to punish the Christian for their beliefs that they stay firm on. And and then it also scares me when I see the gender, is that you can have a man say, I'm a woman, go into a bathroom. What if that man has a camera and starts taking pictures of women? What if your little girl is in there? What if that little girl gets sexually molested? I mean, when you look at this, it's like, I cannot believe, it is unbelievable that this is going forward. Regardless of what you decide tonight, whether you decide whether you decide whether to go forward to vote yes for it or vote no for it, it is quite clear that the gay rights organization that promoted this ordinance is not going to stop in Fayetteville. It is going through all the cities. In fact, they are targeting Arkansas, specifically Christians, to eliminate the Christians saying that homosexuality is a sin, to shut us up, and to shut up the churches. And I am going to be talking with my legislators about putting forth a legislative bill next year that specifically forbids counties and cities from enacting ordinances that basically would be a freedom of religion bill that would specifically not allow cities and counties to violate a Christian's right, or not only Christians, but anybody's right to freedom of religion, freedom, and that they shouldn't be persecuted for their firmly held beliefs. And I'm praying to God that we will have a new attorney next year that will gladly prosecute any city or county that would dare to pass an ordinance like this that specifically targets Christians and churches and Bible studies and Christian day school. And I know there's a couple of legislators here, and I will be asking them to put forward a bill that basically is a freedom of religious bill, and that may even fine cities and counties that enact such ordinances like this. And as a citizen, as a taxpayer here in Fayetteville, it amazes me that I am going to have to pay taxes for an unelected administrator whose sole purpose is to make sure I shut up about homosexuality, the sin of homosexuality, or that gay marriage is right. And I have no recourse on that. That he is going to have fear, intimidation, that he's going to find me, and that I may be prosecuted for that. And that I will be paying for that. And not only that, I know you have that letter from the lawyer. She puts out all the areas where you have potential lawsuits of freedom of religion that the city is going to be having. And what is going to happen is you're going to have to pay for that, which is me, I'm going to have to pay for it. I am going to have to pay for it on my taxes for a city to do the lawsuits against them. I mean, how much money is that going to take us? Millions of dollars? I'm sorry, but I'd rather you guys spend the money on the trails, on the parks, on the libraries. I mean, we have so much more other needs in this city, needs and wants, than just be spending our money on a civil rights administrator and the lawsuits that's going to come out from this ordinance. I would just sincerely and prayerfully ask that you really, really consider this and prayerfully consider this. And I am praying for you guys. I am sincerely praying for you that you would do the right thing, the godly thing, the good thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valerie.
Mr. Mayor, my name is David Garcia. I live at 257 Thompson Avenue, just on the other side of Dixon Street. And I was baptized and raised a Catholic, and I know that there was a long time when some faith communities, many of them in the South, would not have considered me a Christian, but a member of some kind of demonic heretical sect. And I remember the times when, I don't remember these times, I remember reading about the times when the good Christian people of the southern United States used the Bible to justify slavery. And I do remember the time when interracial marriage was against the law, and the good Southern Christians used the Bible to say that interracial marriage was a sin and an abomination before God. So the arguments about religious liberty make me nervous because I know what that liberty has been used for in the past, and it has not been for good things. As a baptized and raised Catholic, I don't feel particularly threatened by this ordinance. I heard people saying that they don't see a problem that needs to be addressed. Mr. Mayor, if I was feeling discrimination as a Mexican American, I would have all kinds of issues with an all-white group telling me that there was no discrimination and I wasn't facing any issues. You'd have to ask the LGBTQ community in Fayetteville if they feel a need for this, and obviously they do. So it's not for the straight community to say there are no problems, because the straight community is not going to face discrimination for being gay. Then there's the issue of bathrooms. I personally don't understand why people get so upset about bathrooms. This may come as a shocking revelation to y'all, but I have a gender-neutral bathroom in my house. Every house I've ever been to in the state of Arkansas or anywhere else in the United States has a gender-neutral bathroom that has been used by men, women, sometimes even cats and dogs. And I haven't seen anything horrible result from that. Now, I can't speak for the other men in this room, but I can speak for myself. When I go into a public restroom, there is usually stalls with doors. And I go in and take care of my business, lock the stall door, and don't pay any attention to what somebody is doing in the stall next to me. That's their business, not mine. So if somebody came in that I thought was funny, they went into their stall and did their business. I went into my stall and did my business. I'm not sure what there is to get upset about. Now, I hear the concern about pedophiles. And anybody who has children, I have 2 children and 5 grandchildren, another grandchild on the way. I have more nephews and nieces than I can keep track of right here in Fayetteville. Of course, pedophiles are a concern. But, Mr. Mayor, in all honesty, I have to say that in the last few years, the biggest pedophile scandal has been from priests of my own faith community. So are we going to legislate against Catholic priests because of the ones that were pedophiles? The most recent national scandal that I remember hearing about with pedophiles was a football coach. Shall we pass laws against football coaches because one was in Pennsylvania or somewhere was a pedophile? Yes, pedophiles are concerns, but that has nothing to do with this issue. If a pedophile is coming after your child, they don't need to sneak into a bathroom or a dressing room to do that. Oh, and the same thing with a dressing room. The last time I bought clothes and tried on clothes, you go in, you close the door, you try your clothes on. I didn't have other men gawking at me while I was changing my clothes. If they did, it's like, look, I don't care. So, I know people get passionate about this issue. It pains me, it saddens me when people of faith get passionate on the wrong side of this issue, when they use the Bible to justify their personal dislikes. That saddens me. that pains me. And to touch on an associated topic, another really passionate issue these days is the immigration issue, the refugee kids at the border. Lots of places, there's been lots of screaming hatred against the refugee children. Fayetteville has responded with the most tremendous outpouring of love. That just touched my heart. That made me so proud of this city. And I think, as the representatives of the city of Fayetteville, Mr. Mayor, the people sitting on either side of you have an opportunity on this ordinance to once again choose love, choose compassion, and make all of us proud of this city. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Yes, please.
Evening, Mayor. My name is Paul Phaneuf, and I live on Aqua Crossing in Fayetteville. I moved to this area from Rhode Island about 2 years ago, and I like it here. This is a great community. Northwest Arkansas, I think this is a great place to live. I read that Chapter 119 legislation, and I have to tell you, I found it shocking. To me, it's an egregious assault on individual liberty, individual conscience, and religious liberty. And I'm not going to quote to you from the Bible, but I would like to make several quick points using the Arkansas Constitution. Let me say that I don't question the intention behind this bill. I don't believe anybody is in favor of discrimination that is intended to harm. That is something that would insult and enrage any of us. But there are some things about this bill that bothered me a lot. I could have spent an hour. I just wrote down a few quick points. One of them is Chapter 119, Section 2. It's called definitions. And it says gender expression means a person's gender-related appearance and behavior, whether or not that gender expression is or is perceived to be different from that traditionally associated with the person's assigned sex at birth. I have a problem with the word assigned. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a man of common sense, and I don't picture the delivery room as a place where people roll dice and assign sex. I think that sex is something that is verified and recorded at the time of birth. And we let murderers out of prison on the basis of what we can determine with DNA, because it's considered to be reliable. And to my mind, DNA is a great scientific way to determine sex. Am I suggesting that there aren't people who have personal challenges that they have to deal with? Of course, and we all feel for that. But that doesn't mean that we have to celebrate the absurd in order to find answers. In 119.07, it talks about general exceptions. This was mentioned by someone earlier. But clearly, when you read this legislation, the burden of proof is always and first on the religious institutions. And what this does in my mind is it places this ordinance in a position that is superior to the First Amendment of the United States Constitution and to the Arkansas State Constitution. In Article 2, Section 24, the Arkansas Constitution states in no ambiguous terms, it says, no human authority can, in any case or manner whatsoever, control or interfere with the right of conscience. The right of conscience is primary. 119.09 speaks to retaliation being prohibited. In sections A, B, and C, they issue a list of things that are prohibited and are considered retaliation. But one of them, it says that it is unlawful to interfere with any person who has opposed any practice made unlawful by this chapter. Technically, if this ordinance were passed, we would be in violation of that law because we're interfering here. Article 2, Section 4 of the Arkansas Constitution speaks to the right of assembly and of petition, and it states that the right of the people peaceably to assemble, to consult for the common good, and to petition by address or remonstrance to the government or any department thereof shall never be abridged. And that speaks to we the people having the right to speak in opposition to something that we consider to be a violation of our unalienable rights that come from God. Article 2, Section 6 says, the free communication of thoughts and opinions is one of the inviolable rights of man. Anything that speaks to abridging that free communication of thoughts and opinions is a violation of the Arkansas Constitution. Finally, Section 119.11 speaks to administration and enforcement. This was addressed by somebody, but I just wonder, how serious is the problem? We've seen no statistics. This is a city of 80,000 people, and we're going to have a paid PC czar? This ordinance is so broadly written that we could easily insert a paragraph that stated that if a man can bark, he can publicly relieve himself on a fire hydrant. I believe that if we pass this law, we will see two things. One is, this city will see lawsuits into forever because nobody is going to take this lying down. And the second thing is that the city runs the risk of massive nonviolent civil disobedience. Liberty trumps political correctness every time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Becky Heppner, representing Calvary Chapel, Fayetteville, 385 Sunbridge. I think we'll do the worst possible thing if we make a decision based on emotion. And emotions run deep on both sides of this issue. And although I am a Christian, I'm most concerned about this proposed ordinance as an American, because you only need to have a good high school civics education to read this and realize it does not protect well our First Amendment's rights to free speech. Anyone's, not just people of the Christian faith. Many faiths have other positions like ours and dislike ours. It doesn't protect everyone. It protects a few. And so, just as a mom, as putting this as simply as I would to my 11-year-old child, this really is all about the First Amendment and writing good legislation, no matter how well-intentioned it might be. If it's not well-written and protecting that American right, the First Amendment, then we need to go back to the drawing board and have some legislation that protects everyone.
Could I get your name again? I didn't quite catch it.
Becky Heppner, Heppner.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Michael Collins, 1625 North Giles Road. I work in a Fortune 500 company locally that actually employs people, and I am also a officer and chaplain in the Army and the United States National Guard, but I am here as a citizen of the United States of Arkansas and of Fayetteville. And I am extremely concerned about this, obviously. For instance, we just listened to a racist rant about how you are incapable of making decisions because of your color. Would that rise to the level of the attention of this new czar that we have? Mr. Mayor, would that have been brought before your attention? Would he have faced criminal charges for that? Should he? Who develops this program? Who funds it? I do. I don't like it already. Who's accountable for it? Who's elected in it? Why do we have it? What's the need for it? All I hear tonight are lots and lots of questions. In my work, I pride myself in doing several things. Among them is protecting the civil rights of American citizens, the federal rights granted to them by the Founding Fathers. And again, I'm not here representing my employment. I'm here representing myself as a citizen. But did you know that in this city a person can refuse to serve a black person if they do not receive public funds? Were you aware of that? Do you know anyone who does? Why? Because it's stupid. Nobody in this town who wants to make a buck is going to be doing the atrocities that have been painted in order to justify the creation of this bureaucratic nightmare. I mean, it just doesn't exist. But let's look even deeper at that. What is discrimination? What is discrimination? Isn't that one side pitting itself against another? Why in America is discrimination wrong? Isn't it because all men were created equal? Some evidently are more equal than others. The idea that man was created equal solved the race issue when the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence went into action, sealed by the Treaty of Paris, which was dedicated to the Trinity in the founding of America. Upon being created equal, we have already solved this issue. All the court needs to do is say, oh, you were treated as an unequal? We're done here. Solved. Why do we need this excess bureaucratic morass? As a student also, a lay student of human nature, I also know that it is in the human nature of power to play favorites. It is in our human nature to reward those who are our friends and allies, and it is in our nature to punish those that we deem not worthy of our help. As we've seen from the testimony here that no one gave two thoughts to, as a person brazenly attacked Christians, particularly Southern Christians, for perceived racisms, and your color, right here, right in front of everybody. Two issues that would have never, I believe, risen to the level of the attention of this new czar. So this is obviously selective discrimination. I mean, this doesn't spell out an anti-Christian ordinance by a city, but if I were to write one and try to slide it in, it would be its twin brother. So who's right in this issue? When we have people who with competing ideas, who's right? How do we decide? Someone asked that question, who is right? Well, our founders, in their wisdom, said that the free market of ideas and the free exchange of people to say what they want will determine the winner in their ideas if they're given enough freedom in order to be able to communicate in a civil manner. That is the foundation of our nation. They were not allowed to have a civil discussion and assemble as they wished, and it caused a lot of problems from what I've read. In a free market of ideas, for instance, in 1960, would you have been as excited about a commission to eliminate the discussion of women's rights in the 60s? Why now is that group who promoted women's rights in the 60s now in charge, interested in stifling free speech for others in this decade? Is it because they won? Because now you have the ball and you can change the rules? Mr. Mayor, I don't think that's fair. Why are we squelching Christian rights now with this amendment? It's been made abundantly clear the constitutional amendments have been read. The problems with this are so numerous. The bottom line of this is a nightmare of relativism versus natural law. You're not asking us to change a law or look at an ordinance. You're asking us to change our fundamental paradigm of an American life. You're asking us to remove the rules of natural law, place it squarely in relativism, and wait for those in elite academia to tell us what's right tomorrow, which may be different than that in the next day. It's anti-liberty fundamentally, and it's so flawed that no amounts of rewrites or amendments on this will change the fact that this is an abomination from top to bottom in the American experience as a citizen who values freedom and liberty. I beg with you, I plead, eliminate this, destroy it. It's already squared away in the court system if somebody has done so wrong to another. We don't need an unelected, unaccountable bureaucracy given to human nature to decide who has free speech in this city and who does not. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm Richard Tiffany. I live at 105 North Willow. There's been a lot of talk about what's the need for this. I have a medical condition that makes it difficult for me to wear shoes. And the one regret that I have with this is that it doesn't cover a wider area than is specified here with the city. Arkansas is one of 2 states that doesn't have a civil rights commission at the state level, and I think that this bill would show that there was a need for one. I've had an ongoing complaint that I've been trying to resolve with the University of Arkansas about them accepting my disability in writing the university transit system that I've been working on since October of 2013. I don't have any place to go between the university and the various departments that I've talked to and the federal government in Washington, D.C. I think that this bill would give an example of the fact that there may not be numerous, but there are complaints that aren't being dealt with, that it's a long way to Washington, D.C. to resolve an issue about ridership on the university transit. And I know this bill wouldn't cover that issue in particular, but I think that there would be similar issues that would come up that would let the state legislature know that, yes, we need to not be one of only 2 that doesn't have a civil rights commission, that we do need to pass it. And I think this bill would provide the evidence that our state legislators need to do something to address problems that are related to this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Mr. Mayor, I'm Rosa Edwards, Lee Street in Fayetteville. I'm a longtime resident, and Fayetteville's my adopted hometown. And this is one of the most open and tolerant communities I know. I agree with Mr. Petty in that regard, that Fayetteville does the right thing. We do. I remember when I was very new here, and I learned that in 1955, the Fayetteville High School football team had voluntarily forfeited their football games rather than bench their African-American players. I was so proud of Fayetteville. That's one of the things that made me fall in love with this city. And I've learned in the years since that decision is the spirit of Fayetteville, because you know what? That wasn't forced upon the team. Their coach gave them the choice. They could have played that year, but they didn't. They chose not to because they did the right thing. That's what Fayetteville does. Fayetteville has a long history, all the way back to the Civil War, of resolving issues peacefully. I've often said we love a great debate in this town, and then we all go to Rick's and have coffee and a donut, and we just love that. That's just Fayetteville. And that's one of the many reasons that I oppose this ordinance, because it really brings up some divisiveness that really, as we see, people can't even tell you the pervasiveness of it being there. Do isolated incidents happen? Are there things that need to be dealt with through existing laws and through existing mechanisms? Sure, I'm sure that happens. But the problems, the can of worms that this opens is just huge. And I honestly don't think that a resident of Fayetteville, someone who's lived here for years, would probably be the one that would cause the problems. I think we would have outside entities who come in who really have an agenda, who want to bring down a business, who want to make a point, who want to challenge this law, and who have been successful in doing that in other situations. Fayetteville may not, or Arkansas may not have a civil rights commission, but some of the states that do are facing significant legislation right now that's probably going to end up before the Supreme Court, and that may change the tenor of civil rights commissions throughout the country. We don't know how those things are going to come out. But basically, if you create a law to solve a problem that's not there, you're going to unintentionally create more problems than you solve. And I know that the city council does not want to do that. Someone mentioned that other things that this money could be used for, expanding Gully Park, expanding our trail system that my husband uses almost every weekend. I mean, these are wonderful things that we can do with this. And so I just urge you to vote against this because it's not needed. It's potentially divisive and costly, and it's going to create a position with funds that could really be used much better elsewhere. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor, I didn't get her name or address.
It's like Rosa Edwards on Lee Street.
Where do you live?
Lee Street.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, my name is Charles Watson. I live on 11 East Davison Street in Fayetteville, Arkansas. My mission in life is to illustrate compassion as a pathway to peace and hope. I'm a member of the Fayetteville Fairness Coalition. I'm the member of the Omni Center for Peace, Justice, and Ecology. I have a strong faith in God. I have no church standing here with me today. I have no Bible in my hand, but I have the Word in my heart. And I'm here on behalf of my neighbor, and that's every citizen in this town. Now, I know if it were to come to a vote today, based on the show of hands by clapping, sounds pretty easy, even. Of course, if we disallowed the votes by those that aren't actually citizens in this town, it might change, but that's not the issue. It's all a matter of the heart. And every person here, whether it's through their particular faith or speaking from their heart, I ask you to pass this. And if there are articles in this, then amend them when that opportunity comes. I assume that it would be amendable. But I ask you to, and if I'm sure it's going to come to a vote, as someone has indicated, well then let the city of Fayetteville vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Yes. Hey.
I know several of you showed up after this was introduced. I'd just like to say again that we're planning on voting on this on August 19th at our next meeting.
Okay, who else would like to address us?
Good evening, Mayor. My name is Rick Cochran. I'm a citizen of Fayetteville. I live at 571 North Cedar Ridge Lane. Some of the things I wanted to say this evening have already been said very well. Some of the things that have kind of been glossed over, I think, is the overreach that this ordinance has. We have backing coming from outside of our area that is a proponent of this type of legislation. And it's already been reported in the news about this. And they have targeted Fayetteville as one of the towns they wish to try and do this. They feel that they can persuade us here in Fayetteville to enact a legislation of this type. And make no mistake about this, they feel we are weak. They feel we are weak. The weakest link in Northwest Arkansas because it's coming here. I don't feel we are. I trust in your judgment. When you're sworn into office here, you took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. You took an oath to defend the Constitution of the state of Arkansas. You basically profess to serve we the people of Fayetteville. And I hope it's not other people. I'm here to ask you to protect my freedom, our freedom, my neighbor's freedom. This ordinance does not protect my freedom. It impinges on some of my freedoms. We, the people of Fayetteville, obviously from the comments tonight, don't want a part of this ordinance for numerous reasons. It will spend a lot of taxpayer dollars. for the position that we intend to employ and to defend the position that we take from the enforcement of this new ordinance. I expect that we would be the loser in any litigation that comes of it as the ordinance is written at this time. And my request of you tonight is that we make a motion to end the discussion on this and tear it up and throw it away. We need to get on with the business of Fayetteville. Fayetteville's a great place. I've lived here since 1967 in Springdale, graduated Springdale, graduated U of A, been around a long time, 40 plus years. Great place to be. As Thomas Jefferson said, the government is best, which governs least. And I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Thank you. Okay.
Hi, my name is Debbie Beckerdite. I live on Star Drive in Fayetteville. And I just want to say a couple of points because a lot of this has already been said that I wanted to bring up. This ordinance is extremely dangerous to the First Amendment freedoms and discriminatory against the people of faith. It also poses a threat to the public safety and privacy rights. I agree with everyone that's brought up anything against this ordinance, and I strongly encourage you to withdraw this in its entirety. I do want to bring up a few points, though. There are a lot of people of faith living in Arkansas, and when they consider a business here in Fayetteville, if you have an ordinance like this, they are going to think twice about coming into our area. They are not going to want to deal with a civil rights administrator. And existing businesses are going to have a problem with this also. They are not going to want to have to deal with this administrator and all of the problems that it does bring up. So, economically, this will be a disaster for our area. This is going to cost our city millions and millions of dollars in lawsuits. This was brought up, but you also are going to have another attorney, which I'm guessing that they are getting paid $120,000, $130,000 a year, and that's going to be my tax money that's going to have to pay for this, for something that I really do not think that we need for our area. I question whoever drafted this ordinance. I would like to know who did it and the form that it was drawn from, because it's got a lot of problems. It's just riddled with problems. I know attorneys that are just salivating that you pass this because there will be lawsuits. They're just waiting. And when you look at it overall, I don't think that we really have a problem here. You've got businesses that want to make a decision if they want to service a person in our community. And it should be their choice, but I don't think that they're going to be negative. I think that they're going to be cordial. I mean, why would they want to shoot off their own foot? It's money coming in their door. So, economically, you need to really look at this. It's going to be one lawsuit after the other, and we already have a reputation here of not being business friendly. So why add to it by having this ordinance in place? So I strongly ask that you withdraw this. It's a bad, bad idea.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd ask you to forgive the way I look, but I only learned about this meeting about a week ago. I was caring for my 89-year-old mother in New York from Thursday through yesterday, got here at 6 p.m., and I'm leaving at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. My name is Peter Tonnessen, Tonnessen, and I live at 3500 Hearthstone Drive. I was a little reluctant to speak because I've only lived in Fayetteville for 3 years. I've heard what the other speakers have said, and I don't want to repeat what they've said. In particular, I agree with the gentleman in the red shirt, the second speaker, who said this appears to be, these are my words, it appears to be a solution in search of a problem. I don't know the problem here, but let me tell you why I'm here. First of all, I am an attorney. I've been a member of the bar in Virginia since 1977, D.C. since 78, and Colorado since 92. And I agree with the points that the pastor made. I certainly had concerns. I didn't have time to prepare anything, but I have concerns about the definition of non-secular staff, about the 5-year limit, about some of the other definitions that have been brought up. But let me tell you why I moved to Fayetteville. If you had asked me 5 years ago if I would ever live in Arkansas, I would say you're nuts. I grew up in New York City in the public school system for 18 years, went to the University of Virginia during the height of the Vietnam War, went to Georgetown Law School, lived in D.C. for 8 years. I'm a retired Navy pilot. Now I'm an airline pilot. Circumstances brought me to Fayetteville in 2011, and by October of last year, I bought that house where I live now. And people say, why would you leave? 20 years I lived in Colorado with the beauty of the mountains and the wonderfulness of Rocky Mountain people. And they said, why would you go to Fayetteville? And I said, because of the people. I mean, they have the university, which is great. I mean, they have these educated, accomplished people. But there is an underlying humility and decency that I found here that I have not found living 3 years in Spain or 1 year in Austria or all the other places I've told you until I came here. And I loved it so much that I bought a house, and I want to stay here. I see this as an attorney. This is incredible overkill that attacks me in some of my most fundamental rights of religion, association, and speech. I don't see the need for it, as other speakers have pointed out. I think the way 119 is drafted is extremely dangerous. As an American, I resent having a commissar who's going to tell me what I should think. And that's what I view this as. I'm not aware of problems in this town. I mean, Fayetteville is funky, and people want to keep it that way. We love the bike trails. We love the university. We love the neighborhoods. I had a daughter in the schools here. It's all wonderful. When I was growing up, there was a song, Pave Paradise and Put Up a Parking Lot. And I think that as a lawyer, looking at the complexity and really the mean-spiritedness of this 119, Chapter 119, I mean, why do you want to pave the human paradise that you have here and appoint people to tell other people how to think? One last point. And I agree with what the pastor said. I agree with every word that the gentleman in the white shirt said and some of the other speakers. But as I read this ordinance online, I can only rent my house to people I choose if I continue to live there. In other words, if I went away for 2 or 3 years, it's not my choice anymore who lives in that house. And that's wrong. That is fundamentally wrong, and that's what this chapter allows. And so I strongly ask you to reject it. I don't think it can be fixed. And I have drafted federal regulations for the Department of the Interior. I have litigated regulations. I have drafted memoranda of agreement. I don't think this law can be fixed, but I don't see the need for it. And I think it really is an affront to many of us who came here valuing so much what you have in Fayetteville and how kind and gentle and decent the people are, and why you want to do this completely escapes me to the point where I came down here from New York last night on my way to Minneapolis tomorrow. So thanks for having heard me out.
Thank you. Okay, who would like to address us next?
everybody here. I've written you a little letter. My name is Ann Hannah Newell, and I just wanted to put my 2 cents worth in. I've lived here since 1952. I came as a student to the University of Arkansas from Hendrix College, where I transferred up here because they were so strict. At Hendrix, you couldn't date but once a week. It's the truth. And little girls could never go in a car unless their parents accompanied them. I was very protected, raised in Little Rock with very caring parents, and they protected me. And I certainly do appreciate it. I had no sense whatsoever. And I thank God for my parents who took care of me. And then I fell in love and got married to a man, and we wanted to live in Fayetteville because it was so beautiful. And can you imagine Fayetteville in 1952, how little it was? You could walk on the campus. Mother could come up here from Little Rock and find me at the library, but I was not studying. It has nothing to do with college. I just came up here to wait out my time till I got married so I could have a family, which I now have, a lot of children. And I have 4 boys and 1 girl, 13 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. And they're all being protected by the laws that are in existence right now. Little girls are little girls, and little boys are little boys. And never the twain shall meet, or so it seems. But however, we have a responsibility to our generation that's following us to make sure that their rights are preserved, that they are protected and kept safe from harm, without policing them or being policed by an overreaching governmental official. This city has always listened carefully to the will of the people, and everyone here has been able to express their own opinion without any kind of contempt. I appreciate that about America. And that is what we want to preserve. You can think what you want to, but let's preserve the sanctity of our children's rights. And not only that, the right of businesses to decide who is going to live in their rental property and who is not. I hate to get personal, but I used to clean up nasty little trailers because we had a trailer park. And my husband was so sweet. He always believed that you just should rent to anybody, and we did. But I was the one that cleaned them up, and so we didn't have much of a stipulation. However, that was, 40 years ago. And so I'm asking you all to really consider this little ordinance. It's not a little ordinance. It's very dynamic. And I think this is your second reading. Is that right? And you'll have one more reading. And I want you all to know that I'll be praying for every one of you to consider everyone has said about this. And God bless you. And we still think Fayetteville's beautiful.
Okay, who would like to address us next?
Good evening. My name is Randy Alexander. I live in Springdale, but part of my legislative district includes portions of Fayetteville. A lot of the comments that have been made, I agree with. The thing I guess I'm most concerned about in this is continuation of a trend that I see. This phrase in here, non-secular positions. And then it goes on to say the party will have the burden of proving that the discrimination is in fact necessary result of such a bona fide condition. According to who? Apparently according to a civil rights administrator, an unelected civil rights administrator, who from this, I assume, has the last word on this. We've seen in our country a lot of debate about religious freedom and rights. And one of the things that surprises me, it seems to always come down to organizations. You give exceptions for churches. Maybe you give exceptions for a Catholic hospital. We don't want to give an exception to Hobby Lobby, although they won in court. And it seems to be focused at organizations. The Bill of Rights, as I understand it, guarantees individual liberties. And we're seeing situations where a florist or a baker, people who do business with people from the gay community, but draw the line at a marriage ceremony, they're being told that they can't do that. What about their individual right? I was very surprised in all this debate how few times, I can't even recall one, on the talk shows when they were talking about this, you would think that the rights in the Constitution are guaranteed only to organizations because individuals weren't mentioned. I don't think that's the case. The last thing that I want to bring up, I think a lot of these issues are being debated over a difference of the idea of fairness and equality. And the gay marriage issue that has been in the news a lot lately appeals to the argument of equality. I think we need to remember something and understand what that particular issue is really about. It's not about equality. All of us in the room have exactly the same rights in terms of marriage. If we're single, we can marry another single person of a different gender. If we're single, we cannot marry another person of the same gender. It affects all of us exactly the same. The fact that I may not choose to exercise a right doesn't mean I don't have it. I have the right to go deer hunting. I don't particularly get too excited about getting up in the middle of the night and walking through the woods in the dark and climbing up in a cold deer stand and going deer hunting. But I have that right, even though I've chosen not to exercise it. We need to be clear about what that particular issue is about. It is about the definition of marriage. That's what it is. It's not about equal rights. I agree with what several others have said, that I think we're inviting lawsuits. I don't know why we would want to do this. I don't see what we gain. I have not heard of people being discriminated against in our community. And so I would caution you to pull back on this. I agree with some of the others. I don't see how you rewrite this in a way that will protect the rights, constitutional rights of individuals. I just don't think you can do it. So I would encourage you to vote against it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who would like to address us next?
Mr. Mayor, my name is Rex Griffin. I live at 2131 Honeysuckle in Fayetteville. And while I was born here, I was born at Washington Regional and love this city. It's a great city. It's a very diverse city. It's a creative community. It's a great place to live. Having lived in Fort Worth, St. Louis, Atlanta, Memphis, Fayetteville's a great place to live. And I come before you with, I would first like to note that I am in agreement with Mr. Campbell, Pastor, Mr. Wilson, and the statements that they made, and I will not reiterate those. But I would like to make two other points. Number one, are we prepared to watch the mother of a 5-year-old child be prosecuted for trying to protect the values that she holds for her child? Are we ready and prepared to watch a pastor in his church be prosecuted just because he believes differently than others? You know, I don't come up here with my Bible tonight. I didn't come up here representing my church. But I certainly don't appreciate the insinuation that if I did, my opinion should be discounted, which was made earlier. The third thing that I would like to mention is this. Much of what we're discussing here tonight are not issues of morality, but not issues of equality, but morality. And we should tread very lightly. I have friends that are gay. I have friends that are of different faiths, Muslim, no faith. I have friends that I have coffee with regularly that disagree with me politically. We go to ball games together. And the only reason I bring these things up is because we all bring our ideas to the table and we believe differently and we practice differently. And I would just ask you this question. If you enact this law, does this law better help bring us together as a community to discuss openly and freely our differences? No one here tonight has said anything about wanting to see people discriminated against. But also nowhere tonight should anyone be given a special class of rights that would supersede other people's individual liberties. The best thing that we can do is to leave the table open. Put on the pot of coffee. Hope that we can live peaceably with one another. Agreeing to disagree. Agreeing to work and live as a community that is diverse, creative, and yes, we disagree with one another at times. But just because we disagree with each other doesn't make it a bad thing. Thank you.
All right, who would like to address us next? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the council. Matthew, I believe you have some amendments you would like to present at this time to the council.
Yeah, before I make the motion, I would like to thank the members of the public, and I think everybody does feel passionately about this, and I can certainly appreciate that. And I want to thank you personally. Most of you are very civil and respectful, and I think that's one of the great things about Fayetteville we can be proud of. So thank you to those of you who made an effort to be that way. I would like to, I know some of the council members also feel passionately about this. It's not usually a problem at the council. I'd like to encourage you to return that respect. So I would like to make this motion to make some of these amendments. I do have some responses, but I'd like to do these amendments first. The first amendment is really just a clarification of the definitions. That employee refers to employees and not applicants. The Second Amendment clarifies that not just the city, but also our employees will be bound by this ordinance. And the last amendment, which I will read here, is in 11907. It's a new subsection I. It says, nothing contained in this chapter shall be deemed to require any religious or denominational institution to open its sanctuary or chapel to any individual or group for any ceremony, including, but not limited to, weddings, funerals, confirmations, or baptisms that do not align with that religious or denominational institution's statement of faith or beliefs. So I'd make the motion to make these amendments.
Second.
Okay, what discussion do we have among council on this? Anything? Okay, we're going to open it up for public comment. Remember the rules. Everybody gets, you know the rules, right? Everybody gets one turn at the microphone unless council member brings you up. Keep your remarks addressed to the chair. Don't engage council members, somebody from the or someone from the public.
And
Okay?
they should be to the amendments itself.
Yes, I'm sorry, to the amendments. Yes. Not, okay.
Jeremy Flanagan, Pathway Baptist Church, Cannondale Drive. I don't think there's really any amendment that will comprehensively fix the major flaws in this. When you look at the last amendment, which I think is an attempt to try and back people of faith away from seeing this, that's only the tip of this issue. Also, when you make a list, lists change. Different types of services change. You're talking about religious activities in that amendment. You don't say anything about civic meetings that are non-religious by nature, but still go against fundamental beliefs of our church. And so you can make as many lists and exceptions and everything else as you want, but eventually there will be something that we would be open and required to do that would go against what we want to do. And that's the problem. We're making lists. We're making lists about who has the right to believe what they want to believe and who doesn't. As a person of faith, it is not about exclusion. I believe what I believe, and if people don't believe what I believe, that's perfectly fine. And plenty of people that are my close friends and family don't, and so that's fine. But to have as a city where we start trying to delineate that, this amendment, I don't think fixes that. I applaud the attempt to try and say it isn't our intent, but intent of a law doesn't necessarily mean that law still can't be used against individuals or organizations. Intent rarely stops somebody from taking the letter of the law, and as situations change, still using it. So, Council, I would just, Chair, I would just say that this amendment falls short of still protecting people and all people.
Well, I understand that, Pastor, but what I think the attempt is here is at an amendment, or it just stays like it is. That's the question, is the amendments. I know that you're not...
Yes, that's what I'm saying. If the council votes for the amendment, I still see the council voting for a bad law.
Okay.
And so a vote for an amendment to try and carve out a niche for churches is still a vote for a bad law, and still a vote for a law that will infringe on individual liberties of faith, individual conscience, and eventually that list will not be sufficient. No list you come and amend to later will be sufficient. And so actually, as a pastor, a vote for this amendment is saying, we're trying to make you happy now, but I'm telling you, there is no way that this law amended would still make me feel comfortable that it would not be used against people of conscience.
I just want to be sure. So you're against the amendments?
I'm against both. A vote for the amendment to try and say that it's going to fix this, in my mind, is a vote to say that we're trying to convince you it's going to be okay.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Maybe this is against my better judgment, but I'm going to be absolutely clear. I don't expect anybody who spoke tonight against us to support this ordinance because of this amendment.
Okay. All right. Yes.
Neal Phaneuf. I live in Fayetteville. And I just wanted to mention that's not even a good shade of lipstick. It's still what it is. Still is what it is.
Okay.
Duncan Campbell again. While I do appreciate the attempt to fix this ordinance, I agree with the comments before. Nothing's going to fix it. And in relation to the first one, where you further reach and ask, that everybody that works for the city of Fayetteville to be subject to all of this, I've seen that kind of thing. I've traveled around the world helping orphans in different countries. I was in Romania when the Iron Curtain fell, and I saw the results of what happened with a government that was so focused on central control that they demanded things of the public servants, and then went further than that. They demanded things of the neighborhood party chairmen, and then they demanded things of the neighbors. And they demanded, it got so far that they demanded that everyone tell on everybody. And fully a third of the people in Romania were engaged in ratting on their neighbors to the Securitate, the secret police. It's a dangerous road to go down here, to just keep asking more and more people to be involved in this. And again, I'm a person who never discriminates about anything. I love people. I love people of every different persuasion, and I have friends in different religions, different ethnics, different persuasions of all kinds. They're always going to be my friend, and we're always going to agree to disagree on certain things. But I believe that amendments won't fix it. You know, I'm definitely against the ordinance. I think it's a far-reaching thing that has serious implications, and I just urge you to vote this thing down. Thank you.
Mayor, I move we call the vote on the amendment.
You can move for an immediate vote, and it requires a two-thirds vote of the council.
I understand.
But that requires also a second before you can get to a vote.
I understand that.
Second.
Well, okay.
I'll just stand right here and watch then. I have a feeling that was called because I stood up.
Nah, nothing to do with you personally, sir. I promise you.
Okay.
Promises.
Now, do we have any discussion among the council?
No, it's an immediate vote.
Oh, okay.
So, may I ask a point of order then? If I thought a move to call the vote required a vote to vote.
That's what it does. It requires a two-thirds vote in order to cut off discussion and get to the vote. Because
Thank
what
you.
you'd be doing is ending discussion. This is what this initial vote would be.
Right.
Mm. Yes, just.
So, Matthew, just so I understand, you're wanting to end public comment.
I think we're hearing that this amendment isn't going to fix it, and I think we're going to hear that over and over again. And I don't think we're having substantive discussion on the amendments themselves.
Okay. All right. Well, Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Ray?
Yes.
Marsh?
Yes.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Petty?
Yes.
Tennant?
No.
Shopmeyer?
No.
Adams?
No.
Long?
Yes.
That's 5 affirmative votes, so Mayor, you have a right to vote if you want to break the tie.
I'm going to listen to the public.
Okay. The motion failed.
Mayor, thank you very much. Michael Collins again, 1625 Giles Road, Fayetteville. What I heard in this amendment is we, this august body, have the right to dictate which religious terms are exempted from a law that we will deign appropriate through an unelected and unaccountable commissar to watch over our deeds and our words. So in essence, what I heard was an identification of the clean end of a pre-fossilized coprolite, which we could pick up. I vote no against, I would urge you to vote no on this amendment, as well as the overall thing, because it still satisfies nothing. Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Doug Paschal. I live at 18518 Duncan Road, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I would encourage you not to vote for this amendment. It seems like a carrot thrown out to satisfy the religious community. It still does not address the employment opportunities and employing those in non-clerical roles. It also leaves open the opportunity for discrimination in which we speak, and what we say, and what we print in opposition to certain lifestyles. Now, I am a pastor of the First Southern Baptist Church of Goshen, but I also speak as a father and a husband when I encourage you to vote against this amendment, to vote against this ordinance, so much to withdraw it and cast it out. And please do not let this become a blemish on our great city of Fayetteville. I was born at Washington Regional, just down the road when it was still the old building. I love living here. I've traveled extensively in my life, and people ask me why I stay here. It's because I love this place. And I think this would be a sore blemish on our positive image. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, for your vote in the intent voting against the attempt to silence public opinion on this issue. I really appreciate that. I am going to make my comment specifically to the last amendment. The amendment that you've offered just shows that, yes, you acknowledge that this ordinance was blatantly anti-Christian. When you're saying you're going to, quote, exclude all the churches. And whether or not you vote for this amendment, I don't care, because this ordinance is so rotten. It stinks so bad.
Valerie, stay with the amendment, okay? Stay with the amendment.
All right, I guess you get my general opinion.
Yes.
That this ordinance will not fix it, and I thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Gladys Tiffany, Omni Center. I would like to speak in favor of the amendment again, and I'd like to remind the City Council that the forces of fear and fear of anti-discrimination, apparently, are very much present tonight, but that they are not the only voices in Fayetteville, and that if Fayetteville had a chance, it would speak in favor of this bill, that this is something that there is a significant portion of this town that could support anti-discrimination measures, and I'd like you to be reminded that that is entirely possible.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Campbell. I live on 1208 West Westridge Lane in Fayetteville. And we're talking about an amendment, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I hear that amendment again, please?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Did you want to read that, or Matthew, you want to read it?
Well, basically, the first part of it was just to correct the definition of employee, to remove an applicant, so it only would apply to actual employees, not applicants, and also you have to be an employee of a covered employer, in other words, an employer that hires enough employees to be covered. The second one makes it clear that the city and all its employees are covered by this ordinance, just like most other businesses would be. And third, I'll just have to read that. It is basically to ensure that the sanctuary or the chapel of a religious institution, whatever that might be, synagogue or a church or whatever, would not be required to allow another group to use that if they did not agree with their particular faith position. And it says, nothing contained in this chapter shall be deemed to require any religious or denominational institution to open the sanctuary or chapel to any individual or group for any ceremony, including, but not limited to, weddings, funerals, confirmations, or baptisms that do not align with that religious or denominational institution's statement of faith or belief. So those were the amendments that were proposed. We were looking at that. We're still looking at the ordinance. That's one reason we didn't want to rush through it. I have another proposed amendment that I will talk about after this one is through, but that's what you're looking at right now.
And so, has that proposed amendment come forth because of the problems of the ordinance that we first discussed?
Yes, I think obviously this was an extremely long ordinance. You wouldn't believe how long it was when it first hit my office. It was a model ordinance drafted by the Human Rights Commission, I think, and it had many, many pages and many sections, some of which we needed to remove because they were not properly legal or constitutional, in my opinion, and we also made other modifications to it. However, being as long as it is, there are still refinements that need to be made. I think there were some good points made tonight, and that's one of the reasons that I'm going to propose to the City Council another amendment once this one is voted on. And my speech to the City Council is, whether you approve this law overall or not, it should be made as constitutional, legal, and good as you can make it, even if you're eventually going to vote it down. That it makes no sense to say, it's a bad law, let's keep it bad, because then we'll have to vote it down. I think that the overall tenor of this, you can certainly look and vote it down if you want to, or vote it up, however it is. I am not a proponent of this or opponent of it, either one. I'm just the attorney. But I do recommend it be made as good as possible before you actually come to a final vote. You understand what's up before the council right now? Then?
I understand. I just wanted to make sure that we understand that there are a number of groups, organizations, clubs, institutions, cliques, and other things in our society that decide who and who they don't want to either be involved or to use their facilities. Even as simple as paying a membership. If you don't pay your membership, you cannot be part of this. That's, of course, a very oversimplification of it. But I wanted to make sure that when you're talking about religious institutions, that you are including in there the mosques, synagogues, and churches, that we understand that all of these people have a right by our Constitution to decide how their facilities will be utilized. I think that they are private institutions that can make these decisions. I don't understand why the government would tell a pastor or a rabbi or an imam, you have to do this or you have to do that. And I understand that surely we all understand this, and that's why that amendment has come forth. But I think that what this other girl said earlier is that in order to have this amendment come forth, it's because there's some sort of an admission that there is a problem with the first ordinance. So therefore, we have to fix. And
you might ask our representatives of the state whether they ever have amendments to any of their proposed bills that come forward. I can guarantee you at the city level, we amend ordinances frequently because we look at them, we hear from the public, we react, and we try to make the ordinances better.
yeah, I agree with that. We do want to make the ordinances better. But this one that has been brought up earlier is not very good at all, even at the first reading. So obviously, we immediately have to go into fix mode. I think that's an issue. I think like what you said earlier about before bringing the ordinance, making it as good as it possibly could be, would be the most intelligible thing to do, instead of having fear and all these concerns brought up to our community that really are unnecessary, of course, in my own opinion, and thank you for listening to me. I also wanted to just say that I don't really think there is a huge problem. I think all of us in our lives know that there are times when we were discriminated against in some form or fashion, whether it was real or perceived, and we got over it. I think that people all over, I mean, when I was in a fraternity, we decided who we wanted as members and who we didn't. When you're in a synagogue, you decide who does what and who doesn't. When you're in a business, it's the same thing. We all evaluate. It's a natural part of life. I just think it's ridiculous to single out certain groups and say you have to do this, and say other groups you have the freedom to do whatever, carte blanche, whatever you want to do. So that's just my opinion. I thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, who else would like to address us?
My name is Larry Little. I'm the pastor of the Westridge Free Will Baptist Church at 4596 West Weddington in Fayetteville. I'm also a resident of Springdale. Do I have your permission to address you and rise in opposition to this ordinance, as well as the amendments as they are currently written here today? Do I have your permission to do that?
I will allow it.
I will do that here today.
I'm sorry.
I missed the name of the organization.
Say again?
I missed the name of the organization.
Westridge Free Will Baptist Church, 4596 West Weddington. About 2 blocks past Westwood Gardens.
Thank you.
You can almost smell the catfish hole from there.
I've seen it.
I've never done this before, so I'm a little out of my element. But suffice to say that I'm opposed to this ordinance, as well as the amendments as they are currently written, as well as any amendments following, no matter how they are written. This is bad for business. This is bad for the expression of religious freedom. This is bad all the way around. I realize that I'm in the company of very distinguished and learned people here today, probably much smarter than myself. So I trust you as the elected officials of the city in which you reside and these people who have elected you to do the most advantageous thing, vote this thing down immediately, and let's proceed with the greater business that we have here present this evening. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Little.
Pastor, I believe, yeah.
I didn't really understand. So did you think the amendment is a good idea, or do you think that the ordinance is better without it?
I think the ordinance, as it is currently written, is one of the most horrible ideas ever devised by political officials. I think the amendments, as they're currently written, are just as a bad idea as the amendment as it currently says. I'm totally opposed to both the amendments and the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Again, Becky Heppner, Calvary Chapel, Fayetteville on Sunbridge Road. Again, I think it's important we remain unemotional about this and look at this simply. So I want to speak against the amendment simply, that yes, it does provide a little protection for religious institutions. But again, the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law concerning the establishment of religion or the free exercise thereof. So that what it does not address is the individual's right to exercise their belief system. The Bill of Rights is for individuals, has been pointed out, not for institutions. So that's why I'm against it. I don't see it fixes the fundamental problem I see, again, as an American who wants everyone to have an equal voice, everyone to be heard, whether I agree with them or not, or whether they agree with me or not. So that's why I'm against it.
Tony Blansett. I'm on Grove Avenue. One of the things that I'm looking at here is a confusion about what the function of government is. The function of government is to keep people from doing violence on each other. And so the government commits violence against people who would do violence on each other. George Washington said that government is not eloquence. There's nothing good about it. It's violence. That's what we're supposed to do, is to secure the peace. This is not securing the peace. This is creating violence upon peaceful people. You are usurping people's rights to their property, whether it is a church or an individual. This could end up being somebody's home. Somebody will eventually say, well, according to this ordinance, that man's house should be open for me to have my meeting. Or that person who's taking out the trash, which is actually the homeowner's son or daughter, could best be done by me, and I'm being discriminated against. It will eventually get to that. Eventually, somebody will say, I am protected by that ordinance, or they are in violation of that ordinance. This is opening a can of worms that never stops, because it always keeps creeping in and in on individual liberties. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. What was your name again?
Say again?
Your name?
Tony Blansett.
I'm sorry, can you spell your last name?
Blansett.
Mr. Mayor, my name is David Garcia, and I still live at 257 Thompson Avenue in Fayetteville. And before speaking to the amendment, I wanted to speak to a point of process. And Mr. Mayor, I wanted to thank you for your vote to allow the continued public comment. I've spoken to the City Council, not recently, but in the past on many an issue, and sometimes to very hostile mayors and city councils, and I know what it feels like to be cut off from debate. So even though a lot of the people here that are speaking I would be in disagreement with, I appreciate you and those who voted to let the people actually be heard. I think that's an important part of the process. It takes time, it gets messy, it can go on and on and on, but I think it's important, and I'm very grateful to you for feeling that and voting the way you did. On this particular amendment, what I see is the imperfection of human beings. I have yet to see anything human that is perfect. As the city attorney said, the amendments are part of the process. The fact that amendments are being offered does not, to me, mean that the thing is automatically horrible. It means that it's human, and we do what we can to try to fix it and improve it. I also see that those who were offering this ordinance were attempting to reach some kind of accommodation with the concerns of those who disagreed with them. And I see those who disagreed firmly, consistently, repeatedly refusing that. And that saddens me. I think part of the process of politics in this country, in this democracy, is compromise, where you try to work out an accommodation, you try to agree, even if not everybody gets everything that they want. As to the constitutionality or unconstitutionality of the amendment and the ordinances, I was struck by something that the city attorney said, and I do not mean to put him on the spot, but what I heard him say was that they took the original ordinance and removed the unconstitutional provisions, and then were making amendments to improve, as they heard from the public, things that needed to be improved. So that I think I understand that if this was an unconstitutional bill, the city attorney, by his oath of office, would have been required to make that, speak that very loud and clear to the city council and to the public. And I have not heard him say that. I heard him say they removed anything that was unconstitutional and that the amendments are working to try to improve it even more. And that sounds to me like the essence of the American democratic process. So I thank you for all that work.
Okay.
My name is Bob Ballinger. I'm a state representative for the eastern part of Washington County. I attend church in Fayetteville. I have constituents who work in Fayetteville and of course, worship in Fayetteville. I appreciate, thank you, Mayor, for hearing everybody. That is.
I'm sorry, what was your address?
Oh,
your
it's
home
1757 Madison, 7150 in Hinesville, Arkansas. Thank you. 72738. My concern is almost technical, but I think it's pretty substantial with the amendment itself. And frankly, I think maybe it bodes to what a lot of people have said, but maybe they have not articulated as clearly as possible. I'm going to try to do that, although I can muddle things up sometimes myself. But the concern with the amendment is maybe you're working in an area that the city government is not really designed to work in. With the amendment itself, it says very clearly that anything that conflicts with the statement of faith of that church. So are you asking churches to amend their statement of faith? Is that what you think? You think that's the role of the city, to ask people to amend their statement of faith? And in fact, what they would have to do is amend their statement of faith to take a very strong stand against homosexuality. And I don't know if that's really what the city is asking them to do. I would assume there's some churches that may not have a statement of faith at all in writing. So I don't know if this amendment would apply to those churches that don't have a written statement of faith at all. That'd be an interesting interpretation to find out how that worked. And I know my statement of faith in my church, which is here in Fayetteville, doesn't say anything about homosexuality at all. But I can tell you that if this ordinance passes with the amendment, that we will be forced to amend our statement of faith to take a public stand against homosexuality, which is probably not what my church would want to do and choose to do, but you would put us into a position where maybe we'd have to do that. And frankly, I just don't think that's a role of city government. And I think that it really goes to the constitutionality of the whole thing. And I understand the intent of it. You really are trying to loosen up a little bit of what the effect would be on churches. But the reality is you have an ordinance that's messing around in an area that constitutionally you don't have any right to be. And that's why the amendment doesn't fix the problem. The amendment just causes new aspects and new parts of the same problem. So I know that there's a lot of people who have a hard time articulating that, why they're opposed to an amendment that seemingly offers some additional liberties that you were going to be taken away. But the reality is the whole thing is messing around an area it probably has no business messing around it. Anyway, thank you all very much.
Mr. Ballinger.
Yes, we have a question.
Mr. Ballinger, I'd like to ask you a question. I had already written down when we got back to the council that I wanted to ask Kit, what is a statement of faith to an administrator administrating this law if it was to pass? And so, having been in several denominations, I guess I kind of know what the statement of faith is. How does the statement of faith get created in your church? Is it a vote of the church? Is it just a written document on the church bulletin on Sunday? Is it outside on the... What is a statement of faith in this amendment?
A statement of faith or beliefs was just a term that was intended to be very broad. So it would be something that the church or that synagogue or something would basically have a disagreement with. As you might be aware, when an ordinance is drawn that is potentially called a penal ordinance, in other words, if you violate it, you can be prosecuted by the city prosecutor and face up to a big fine, like $500. Then it's always construed in favor of the individual and against the government. So that this was intentionally drafted to be very broad so we wouldn't have the kind of problems that you're thinking about.
And I do understand that. And any time that you are taking away some sort of thing that would be interpreted as civil liberties, they tend to interpret those new laws in favor of more liberty. And that's great. That's good. But you would be forced into the situation of trying, as a church, trying to demonstrate what our statement of faith is. And if you don't have a written statement of faith, my assumption is maybe some churches don't, then at that point, how do we demonstrate what our statement of faith is?
Well, this is probably something that would actually never come up, unless the only time this could possibly come up is if a group came to your church.
Okay, everybody.
If someone or a group came to your church and said they wanted to use your chapel, and your congregation felt like that was not appropriate, then they could potentially come and complain to the civil rights administrator, who will try to mediate and see if there's any issue on that. I think it'd be very easy for your church to say, well, that's just beyond our statement of faith and beliefs, and to have them in our chapel, using our chapel, that's as far as it would go.
Well, and I understand that that's your point, and that probably if you were the administrator, you would probably be very reasonable in that situation. As we sit right now, we don't know who we're granting that power and that authority to. Well, and so you want to try, if there is any way to put protections within this code, you want to try to not rely on the interpretation and the rules of interpretation. You want to try to make them as clear as possible. So if really the intent is to make it as loose as that, then remove the language dealing with the statement of faith altogether and allow any place of worship to decide on its own how its place is used. Now, that doesn't fix the ordinance, because we still have individuals. That everyone doesn't work through the institution. Some people operate by their faith individually. You got a variety of different faiths. Some of them, there is no institution around for them to worship in. There's very few Buddhist temples. There's very few, any other places. So, and there's very, I don't know how many, Baha'i, areas there is for people to worship. There's individuals who are worshiping on their own that would also have to deal with it. But this amendment, speaking to this amendment itself, you have to, if you're going to try to operate and allow them the leniency to decide on their own, you can't make it narrow to the point of their own statement of faith. Or you've got to define what statement of faith is before you move forward.
Well, it says statement of faith or beliefs, so certainly it'd be pretty easy for the church to say our beliefs are not that this group should use our chapel. And let me make two other points here. the civil rights administrator has no power. The civil rights administrator has power to investigate and then potentially say, well, you ought to go, I think you've got a good claim, so you ought to go to the city prosecutor. The city prosecutor then has complete discretion about whether or not he can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that someone has violated this.
You're an attorney. You live in the same world that I live in. As soon as a person is brought to court, and if they have the choice to decide whether this thing is going to proceed to the point where a city prosecutor can bring it to court, you will have already tried to and had to retain an attorney to start working through this administrative process. You would need to have put your ducks in a row, and frankly, you would need to come up with some way of demonstrating that this is not within your belief system. So I don't know how you do that, but you've put the burden on an institution of worship, on an individual who's supposed to have a constitutionally protected right to worship, to try to demonstrate that they're not violating your city ordinance. And I realize that that is a difficult thing. I understand the intent behind this is one to try to help people. But very clearly, I think that has been mentioned today over and over again, you guys are ending up hurting more people than you're helping through this. And I just think that you ought to take a step back, look through it, maybe take a smaller approach than what you're doing, and seeing if there's a better way to do this that isn't going to hurt the people that you represent. But thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Yes, Alan.
So I just have a question specifically about the amendment, not about the overall.
Sure.
Not about the overall ordinance, your feelings regarding that. But do you think the amendment would be better if it left out statement of faith and just said beliefs?
I would say the amendment would be better if it left out statement of faith and beliefs, because then it wouldn't create the burden on the institution to try to prove that that is within its statement of faith and beliefs and all that. It would be better like that. Now, would I support the amendment like that? I don't know, because the whole ordinance is such a mess and in an area shouldn't be messing with. That's another question. But as it's written now, as the amendment's written now, it's a problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you need anything else, Alan? All right. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Rosa Edwards, Lee Street in Fayetteville. I just want to address the amendment related specifically, kind of piggybacking on the First Amendment discussion. Our founders in that very wisely put freedom of religion, not freedom of worship. And I'm concerned that this amendment focuses on what's perceived as the location of worship, the sanctuary or the chapel. But freedom of religion encompasses the entire building, and not only the entire building, but the entire works of the church, whether those occur within or without the building. And so, the square footage of a sanctuary might be 2,500 square foot, but the square footage of the building might be 7,500 square foot, and is the other 5,000 square foot not exempt? We really have to focus on the fact that it is freedom of religion, not just freedom of worship. And the narrow definition here, just like we just heard the conversation for several minutes about statement of faith versus belief, and what if your statement of faith is the entire Bible and that's all your statement of faith? Like, you just get into defining these terms very narrowly. The reality is that freedom of worship for individuals and freedom of religion for individuals and for churches is far broader than freedom of worship. And it includes, for example, a bazaar that might be held in the church that we would want to open up to the public, but we might want to limit what materials are offered. And anybody might be able to come to that, but we're not going to let just anybody have their stuff out. But part of that bazaar is in the sanctuary, and part of that bazaar is in the children's church area. And so, that is just one very small example of the fact that limiting an amendment to just the sanctuary or the chapel doesn't address freedom of religion at all. In fact, it contrary focuses on the worship aspect of it, which is just one very, very small part. It's about what we do for 2 hours a week. It's not the whole rest of the time. So I just urge you to vote against this amendment and for freedom of religion.
Okay.
So, Mayor, I have another question of Kit. May I ask Kit a question on that point?
Go ahead.
So I had written down two things. One was, what designates or what requirements constitute a religious or denominational institution? And the other one was the statement of faith one. So those two speakers commented on the two things I'd written down. What does, in word 13 or 14 of this amendment, require any religious or denominational institution. What is a do you have to have filed for tax status of some sort, or do you have to have a sign on your building saying you are religious? Or?
We chose the broadest terms we could for any religious institution so that all of them would be protected.
But what it? Okay. Well, okay. I mean, we've all driven down a highway that says church this way, and it's a barn. I mean, is that a
If you can think of a broader term, you can suggest it, and we'll make it even a broader term. We tried to choose a term that would be understandable, but would be extremely broad to cover every type of religious institution.
Or denominational institution. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Who else would like to address us on this? All right, I'm going to bring it back to the council. Yes.
I'd just like to say, and I'm just speaking for myself, that a lot of times on amendments like this, I think sometimes whether I agree with a lot of them or not, it's good to get to a final document to vote on. Mm-hmm. And for us to get to a final thing to vote on, I think we need to write it in a final way. And so whether or not I agree with some of this, I think it's important to get to that final thing, whether it's 2 weeks from now. Matthew mentioned that we plan on voting 2 weeks from now. I don't necessarily plan on voting on this anytime soon. It may need weeks or months of fixing it. I don't know that, but I'm saying that we need to eventually get to a final document to vote on, and so that's why I would encourage us to vote this way so that we can get to that.
Okay, what other comments do we have in council on this?
I was just to piggyback on what Justin was saying. As chair of the Ordinance Review Committee, a lot of times we see ordinances that are kind of all over the place, and we try to bring them together to where we think we can reach some kind of consensus, no matter whether or not it's going to pass the council or not pass the council. But that's why when I asked a couple questions, I said, I don't want to hear an opinion on the ordinance. I want to hear an opinion on the amendment, because it helps us get to something that we can reach some sort of consensus on. And that's what I was trying to communicate. So I hope everyone understood that.
Okay, any other comments from the council on this before we vote on the amendments? Everybody good? All right. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think the amendment is good. I think it addresses a lot of the concerns. I think it is put forth in the spirit of getting along and trying to respect each other's beliefs while also protecting the rights of people to employment and housing and public accommodation, which is what this ordinance was intended to do. So I will be definitely voting in support of the amendment.
Can I ask a question, Mayor?
Yes.
On the second part of so there are really 3 amendments, I guess?
There's many, 3 sections.
3 sections. Okay, in 1906B, would you explain to me a little bit where you say all contractors doing business shall comply? So does that mean will we change something about the bid process to ask them if they're complying, or will we just hear people say that that company doesn't comply? Or all contractors doing business in the city of Fayetteville are not. I wish they were every one city of Fayetteville businesses, but I know they're not. And so no matter where they're located, no matter what they're doing, how are we going to manage that?
You might ask the proponent of the ordinance.
Matthew, could you help me with that a little bit? Just all I mean, I get the spirit of it, and I appreciate the spirit of it, but how will you manage that?
I don't know how it would be managed. I don't run the city, but we have explicit authority over who we choose to do business with, and requiring them to comply with some of our laws is something very typical of other cities of all levels of government.
So you would add it to the process, add some kind of verbiage or line or sentence as we select contractors to see that they comply with this new law.
I presume so.
Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
It seems like to me that it would just be complaint driven. I mean, if we get a complaint about a certain contractor, Would that?
Well, that's probably what I was wondering. Are we going to write it in as a part of our city law anytime we go out on bid to a business, or are we just going to wait and see if we hear that somebody is not? Thank you, Adela. That's, yeah.
Mayor,
Well, I just assume the staff, when a contractor comes in, if they're not complying with the ordinances, they'll say something to them.
I would assume we would add a statement, just like on equal housing applications, that just says we do not discriminate on the basis of race, gender, basically a non-discrimination statement like you'll find in many corporate business statements. It's basically a fuller statement that is more inclusive.
Thank you. Those are good thoughts.
Mayor, can I just make a point of order? Since the topic you're talking about is actually not within the current amendments, and so either you need to make an amendment that talks about changing that contractor's section, or you need to do that as a next amendment just to maintain point of order.
Sorry.
You're talking about 1906?
I was thinking about that, but I wanted to ask the spirit of it before I did that, Don. Thank you.
Okay. We have the amendment before us now. Shall we vote on this?
I'd like to make
Oh, you want to make an amendment?
Yes.
All righty.
Second.
Well, we'll have some more.
in 119.07, I would like to change the word institution to association.
How about or association? So you include them both.
Any religious or denominational association to open its sanctuary or chapel. I don't like the word institution, and I think if a group of people associate together and call themselves a religious or denominational group, I had group written down first, I changed it to association. I'm suggesting association as a change there.
Second.
Okay, we have another amendment to change to require any religious, denominational, or association. Is that correct?
Any religious or denominational association to open.
Okay. Instead of institution.
Yes, thank you.
All right. What comments do we have in the council on this latest amendment? Anything? Yes, Adela.
Kit, I was just wondering, is association as good a word as institution in your way of thinking?
I just want that as broad as possible, so I suggested adding or association so that it could be either one and be as broad as possible. And if you're looking at changing this, I would say that the last clause doesn't even need to be there.
Good.
Which begins with that do not align with. They just, I don't think that needs to be explained if they don't want to have, to open their sanctuary. That's it.
May I add that to my amendment? Or since it's been
You're in
seconded,
control. You're in control.
do I have to ask Alan to?
He would have to agree.
I'll agree.
Okay.
And an institution or association, and then knock out the statement of faith or
Everything after that do not align.
knock out. Yeah, that's real brilliant.
Okay, somebody please read this to me.
Okay, it would be now stating that nothing contained in this chapter shall be deemed to require any religious or denominational institution or association to open its sanctuary or chapel to any individual or group for any ceremony, including but not limited to weddings, funerals, confirmations, or baptisms.
And we're going to do away with that do not align with religious.
Yes.
We're going to strike that. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any comments from the council on this?
This is to amend the amendment right now. First.
Yes, so we're going to amend the amendment. Now, yes, Kit.
Nothing.
Now we're going to take public comment. Everybody gets one turn at the microphone. I'm sure you know the rules by now.
I'll try to be brief. The
yes.
Interesting that Mass and Communion was left out of that list, revealing probably a lack of knowledge of what happens in a religious institution. I would also like to submit that I, as an individual, am a religious person, a spiritual person, a Christian, and I would like to be added in that institution or association. So institution, association, or person, and perhaps maybe the person's business, I would like to have that added in there. Speaking of business, I've heard a lot of people say that the Constitution protects individual rights. The very first code, the United States Code, defines a corporation as a person. So when you're talking about the rights of a person, the reason Hobby Lobby won that case is it is a person, as for all intents and purposes, according to federal law. So let's not overlook that not only do individuals have religious liberty to exercise their freedom of conscience, but so too big organizations. By the way, a quick aside to this, if the person who is, I like the word persecuted that was used before rather than prosecuted, but if the person who is prosecuted does go before the court and is charged with a crime, and then they are found not guilty, they're still, charged with a crime. For instance, if you're the President of the United States or you are the impeached President of the United States, that does tend to lead a little bit of credence one way or the other, doesn't it? If you are a person who is indicted for civil rights violations, what does that do to your character? This is character assassination. And lastly, these amendments are simply switches on a remote control that you people have no business operating. Thank you.
Excuse me, what was your name again?
Okay. All right, y'all.
I would like your name again.
Michael Collins.
And what was your church again?
Pathway Baptist, but I don't pastor there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, I would like to ask you all in a nice way that the applause thing is, although it's exciting, I would like for y'all to refrain from that, please. I mean, both sides have been applauding tonight. Let's move along with this, all right? All right, who would like to be next on the amendment to the amendment?
Mr. Mayor, Paul Phaneuf, Aqua Clark Crossing in Fayetteville. Regarding the amendment to the amendment.
Yes.
The problem that I have with this approach is that what we're dealing with here is a shark bite. And what we need is a tourniquet, a life flight, and a vascular surgeon. And what we've been offered is a couple of Band-Aids, and they're not going to save the patient.
Okay. All right, who would be next? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the council. We have an amendment to the amendment. What discussion do we have on the amendment to the amendment? Am I missing anything? I'm getting a little tired. Yes.
I'm afraid it's getting too broad. Association could really just mean about anything. It could mean two people getting together and claiming they have an association, whether that's at a restaurant or a
sanctuary or a chapel
or something. So I'm getting a little uncomfortable with association. I think I would prefer it was just left an institution.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So would an association of people that had a chapel or a facility?
Well, again, how are we defining chapel or facility?
I mean, but it's okay. That was just my question.
There are people that meet in private homes, that meet in public spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like it needs to be something that is a little more defined.
An institution is more defined than association. Well, we have a second, don't we? So
Maybe we should create an ordinance to figure out what the difference is between association and institution. Maybe for another meeting or something. I don't know. Put a committee together and figure that out.
Oh, yeah. Subcommittee.
The subcommittee. Subcommittees. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry. I'm going to go nuts if I don't say something.
All right, we have changes to make it any religious or denominational institution or association, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
And then we're going to take off, well, I've scratched it out. It ends up with baptisms, correct?
That's correct.
Now we're all in agreement on at least that. Any other comments on this? Now this is to vote on the amendment.
To the amendment.
To the amendment, and then we got to vote on the amendment.
That's correct.
Okay. Just getting it all straight. Any other comments from the council? All right, Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray,
Yes.
Marsh,
No.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Shotmeyer, Adams, Long,
Yes.
Okay, now the amendments. Any final comments on the amendments as a whole? All right. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray,
Yes.
Marsh,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Shotmeyer,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Long.
Yes.
Okay, now Kit, you had an amendment, I believe.
Well, I have something, I want to first recognize and thank Reverend Flanagan, who emailed Alderman Long, who forwarded the email to me. I read his email. I looked back at section 19.05, 2, and I think that the concerns that Reverend Flanagan had were well taken. I also want to confirm to him that, yes, churches are covered by many parts of this ordinances through the public accommodations section. So I think that you are covered, so you have a right to be concerned about this. But this particular section, I think, subsection 2, it goes too far in the way that it is like a prior restraint on freedom of expression, which is always frowned upon by the courts. And so I would recommend at some point, maybe not tonight, that this section be removed in full, subsection 2, and that 1905 simply at that point wouldn't have no sections, but it would have the remaining language that's right now in A and 1. But I do think that subsection 2 is probably something we should not have in there, and I think it should be removed.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion to take out section 2, correct?
1905.
Of 1.19.5.
If you want to do
Remove.
that tonight, or you could wait and we could...
Yes, Alderwoman Adams motioned and I seconded.
Okay, what comments do we have on this? Remove. Yes, absolutely.
You know, I always have a deep respect for our city attorney's opinion, and I appreciate him bringing these things to our attention, and I'll always try to follow his advice.
Okay, any other comments? Well, let's take some public comment. We're removing section 2 of 119.05. Kit, do you think we need to read that to them so they know what's being removed?
No, it is simply the one that talked about not to publish or send forth information that would be discriminatory. I don't think you're going to do it anyway, but I still think that this is something that we should not do. I think it is beyond a reasonable power by the city on this, and that's why I recommend we remove it. I don't think we have a problem with it either.
Okay. Is there any comment on that? Everybody good? All righty then. Up.
So that everybody's not good with it. Still lipstick.
That was a poor choice of words on my part, wasn't it? Yes.
Still lipstick and it's still a pig.
Okay. Yes, Pastor.
I'll throw you a curve, and I would be for this amendment, against the whole thing. And on record, what commission did this come? The Human Rights Commission? Is there a particular one that this originating document came from? And also, we began this whole process writing a law from the base of an unconstitutional and illegal document, and then we tried to make it so. I just think the public would probably like to know where this did originate from, and there are multiple human rights commissions, at least according to Google, and so I don't have anything else other than that. So I'd throw you a curve. I would actually, yes, as much as you can take out, but it's going to take all of it before I would eventually say support the ordinance.
I understand.
So would anyone like to comment on that?
I just had a question to Jeremy. This came directly from your email. One of the issues you had with the ordinance.
Yes, and I appreciate you forwarding that to him
today, and that's the reason that we're.
And that's why I'm saying thank you. Thank you for realizing that this is once again another thing that was against the First Amendment rights and would be used because, and we still are, by definition, we still will classify, however, as a place of public accommodation.
I think that is correct. I think that was the intent of this ordinance. It was intended to be broad, very broad. It's actually been narrowed. You wouldn't believe how much it was narrowed, but it's still very broad.
Yes, and so that is still my overarching concern, is that it's broad to institutions, to individuals, to anyone, and it's still removing division, but there's still it's an ordinance of division.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the council. The motion is second is to remove Section 2 of 119.05. Correct?
That's correct.
Any final comments from the council before we vote on it? Okay, Chandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray.
Yes.
Marsh.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Shopmeyer.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Long.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to leave this on the second reading. Yes, Matthew, you may.
I'm going to save almost all my comments for the last meeting, so I expect we'll hear a lot of the same things. I did want to say one thing, both in some of the editorials in the paper and some of what we heard tonight, there's this idea that there isn't discrimination, or that because I, as a sponsor of the ordinance, won't point to something specific that is not needed. I want to be real clear that there are instances in this idea that I'm going to, A, either disclose someone who's lodged a complaint and expose them to public scrutiny, or B, expose a business or another association that has had an alleged complaint to public scrutiny, is a farce. I would not do that. But there have been instances. And, that's that. That's why I think this ordinance is needed, because there's discrimination here, and I'm against it.
Okay. Any other comments before we move along? All right.
I would like to say something. I am ashamed that there is so much darkness in the hearts of this community. And
all right.
I had no idea that there were so many people eager to discriminate or to protect their right to discriminate. And
okay,
what I saw were young people that were sitting at these first two seats. I saw people of color, people from different religions, and people of different cultures and different genders, and they left after hearing the hateful statements from people in this community. I could see it in their faces. You know what?
All right. Let's everybody calm down.
I am outraged.
You should be. All right. Everybody, calm down.
And I want to enter a plea to the good-hearted people in this community. I think many people have not spoken to us because they thought this was a shoe-in.
You are darkness. Okay.
And I would like them.
Okay. Okay. Everybody, I will have everybody. Okay. All right.
I just want to let the citizens of Fayetteville know that your elected representatives want to hear from you, and that we actually do need to speak out for compassion, for tolerance, and against discrimination. And so I hope that those people understand that their voices are needed, and I'm just issuing a plea for them to step forward and prove that Fayetteville is a compassionate city, and that we would never stand for discrimination.
All right. Okay. All right. Everybody. Okay. All right.
Let's go on to the next agenda item.
Yes. We'll see everybody, I'm sure, in 2 weeks. All right. Next order of business we have, number 1 under new business, RZN 14-4763, rezone southeast corner of Gregg Avenue and Ash Street, Candlelight Place Apartments. An orders to rezone that property described in rezoning petition RZN 14-4763 for approximately 0.94 acres located at the southeast corner of Gregg Avenue and Ash Street from RSF 4 residential single family 4 units per acre to RMF 24 residential multifamily 24 units per acre. Kit.
Be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas, Section 1, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby changes the zone classification of the following described property from RSF 4 residential single family 4 units per acre to RMF 24 residential multifamily 24 units per acre as shown on Exhibits A and B attached here to and made a part hereof. In Section 2, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby amends the official zoning map of the City of Fayetteville to reflect the zoning change provided in Section 1 above.
Okay. Jeremy.
This is a property located at the southeast corner of the intersection of Gregg Avenue and Ash Street. It's almost 1 acre. It's currently zoned RSF 4, residential single-family 4 units per acre. It's currently undeveloped, and the proposal is to rezone the property to RMF 24, which is our residential multifamily zoning designation, up to 24 units per acre. City Plan 2030 future land use map designates this area as a city neighborhood area, which does support this type of density in this location. And this designation also encourages a wide range of density and use, and staff and the Planning Commission voted unanimously in support of this request. There is industrial property to the west, multifamily to the north and the south of this property, so staff is recommending approval of the request.
Okay. What questions do we have for the council on this? Anything? Okay. What public comment do we have on this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council.
Move we suspend the rules and go to the second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and second to go to the second reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray.
Yes.
Marsh.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Shotmar.
Yes.
Adams. Yes. Long.
Yes.
An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 14-4763 for approximately 0.94 acres, located at the southeast corner of Gregg Avenue and Ash Street, from residential single family 4 units per acre to residential multifamily 24 units per acre.
Move we suspend the rules and go to the third reading.
Second.
We have a motion and second to go to the third and final reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray.
Yes.
Marsh.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Shotmar.
Yes.
Adams. Yes. Long.
Yes.
An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 14-4763 for approximately 0.94 acres, located at the southeast corner of Gregg Avenue and Ash Street, from residential single family 4 units per acre to residential multifamily 24 units per acre.
Okay, any final comments from the council on this? Okay. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray.
Yes.
Marsh.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Shotmar.
Yes.
Adams. Yes. Long.
Yes.
Okay, number 2, ADM 14-4720, updates to the drainage criteria manual and UDC amendments. An ordinance to amend 156.04, stormwater drainage and erosion control, Chapter 169, physical alteration of land, Chapter 170, stormwater management, drainage and erosion control, and Chapter 179, low impact development of the Unified Development Code. Kit.
Whereas the city's drainage criteria manual has been successful in minimizing flooding in large storm events, but does not address water quality, does not protect properties from damage due to smaller storm events, and does not consider low-impact development methods, and whereas in August of 2011, the city selected and awarded a contract to FTN Associates to completely revise the city's drainage criteria manual to address those concerns. And whereas adopting the new drainage criteria manual will give the city staff additional flexibility to allow designs that meet the intent of the code and to make changes to the drainage criteria manual as technologies and methods evolve. Now, therefore, be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas, Section 1, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby repeals Section 156.04, Stormwater Drainage and Erosion Control, and enacts a replacement Section 156.04, Physical Alteration of Land and Stormwater Drainage and Erosion Control, as shown on Exhibit A attached here too. Subsection 2, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby repeals Chapter 169, Physical Alteration of Land, and enacts a replacement Chapter 169, Physical Alteration of Land, as shown on Exhibit B attached here too. Section 3, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby repeals Chapter 170, Stormwater Management, drainage and erosion control, and enacts a replacement Chapter 170, stormwater management, drainage and erosion control, as shown on Exhibit C, attached here too. Section 4, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby repeals Chapter 179, Low Impact Development, and enacts a replacement Chapter 179, Low Impact Development, as shown on Exhibit D, attached here too. And Section 5, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby adopts the revised Drainage Control Manual, as shown on Exhibit E, attached here too.
Okay. Sarah?
Good evening. I'm Sarah Reed, staff engineer. Chris Brown, the city engineer, spoke about this at agenda session. So the drainage manual provides technical guidance for new developments regarding control of stormwater runoff. And the updated manual focuses on 4 minimum control measures. I'm just going to speak real briefly about them. The first is water quality, with a goal of either infiltrating or reducing suspended solids by 80% for the first flush rain event. Low impact development is one option to achieve the water quality goal. There's Chapter 5 of the manual is dedicated to low impact development. It has design criteria, methods to calculate reductions in runoff achieved by the low impact development practices used, and gives methods to use those reductions to potentially decrease the size of the traditional stormwater detention required. The second minimum control measure is for channel protection. This measure addresses the small, more frequent rain events, a development site, leaving a development site by requiring the extended detention and low flow release of the smaller storms. Minimum standards 3 and 4 address large storm events and require control of the peak flow leaving the site from a detention pond or otherwise to not exceed pre-development flows. The manual and the ordinance revisions were recommended unanimously by the Planning Commission and by the Environmental Action Committee. And with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Okay. What questions do we have for Sarah on this?
I think, Mayor, I
Yes.
think this is a very large problem in our city. We all of us get calls about this all
Yes,
the
we
time.
do.
So I appreciate the fact that the staff is trying to make it better, and yes,
They've done an
certainly
excellent
very
job on
supportive.
this. Yes, me too.
Thank you.
Something we wanted to do for a while, so we're here. I've totally lost my place here. I was taking comments from you all, correct?
Mhm.
Okay. Any other comments? Do we have any public comment on this? Seeing none, I will bring it back to the council.
I move we go to the second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go to the second reading. Sandra, would you please call the row?
Gray.
Yes.
Marsh.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Hetty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Shopmire.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Long.
Yes.
An ordinance to amend Section 15604, Stormwater Drainage and Erosion Control, Chapter 169, Physical Alteration of Land, Chapter 170, Stormwater Management, Drainage, and Erosion Control, and Chapter 179, Low Impact Development of the Unified Development Code.
Okay.
Move we go to the third and final reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go to the third and final reading. Sandra, would you please call the row?
Gray.
Yes.
Marsh.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Hetty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Shopmire.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Long.
Yes.
An ordinance to amend Section 15604, Stormwater Drainage and Erosion Control, Chapter 169, Physical Alteration of Land, Chapter 170, Stormwater Management, Drainage, and Erosion Control, and Chapter 179, Low Impact Development of the Unified Development Code.
Okay. Any final comments from the council? All right. Sandra, would you please call the row?
Gray.
Yes.
Marsh.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Hetty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Shopmire. Adams.
Yes.
Long.
Yes.
Okay. Number 3, 2015 through 2019 Capital Improvements Plan, CIP. Resolution to adopt the 2015 through 2019 5-year Capital Improvement Plan. Paul?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As we discussed at the last agenda session, we spent about an hour and a half going through all the projects that were in fact recommended by the administration. The we feel we will need over the next 5 years. This is our intermediate planning tool, the capital improvement plan. It's reviewed every 2 years. I need to make it very, very clear that, one, this is not a budget, it's not an appropriation, it's in fact a plan, but it is a starting place for incorporation into the budget discussions. So this plan is subject to change, subject to modification as we discuss the particular appropriation of the year in question. The entire amount of the plan is $113 million over the next 5 years. The lion's share of that, or 34% of that, is for the Sewer and Water Fund, and that's appropriate because the Sewer and Water Fund is by far the largest infrastructure fund that we have. It has in excess of $300 million worth of capital assets, undepreciated capital assets, and so we would expect the capital improvement plan to address that first. Also, if we looked fairly clearly and we add trails, transportation, and shop, transportation, trails, shop, and water and sewer, that's over 74% of the entire capital improvement plan. So those are for those four infrastructure expenditures. If we look at sales tax capital, which is more of a discretionary area that we can look at, we can see that over 50% of that planned $40 million over the next 5 years is for transportation and trails. So that's where the lion's share of those funds go. Again, it's not an appropriation. It's not a budget. It is, in fact, a capital plan. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Yes, Al.
I have a question. Not a specific question about the budget, but I've emailed several department heads about several different things in the budget, and I haven't heard back yet. So I was wondering if the council would mind if we tabled this until the 19th.
I think that'd
fine.
be
It's nothing
yeah,
major. I have some questions, and
Yeah.
I didn't.
I actually have a couple of questions too that I'd like to get.
Good with that.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Okay. I've been asked to take some public comment. Any public comment on CIP? Okay, bring it back to the council. We have a motion to second the table, correct?
Yes.
All right, Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Who was the second?
I'm the second.
Okay, thank you. Gray?
Yes.
Marsh?
Yes.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Hetty?
Yes.
Tennant?
Yes.
Shopmire?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Long?
Yes.
Okay, that concludes our business. What announcements do we have?
Mayor, our last Gully Park concert is this Thursday, 7 p.m. It's the Ben Miller Band. If you haven't had a chance to come out and participate in one of them, this is your last chance for the fall.
Anything else? All right, thank you all very much. We're adjourned.